Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 564 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on another Sunday fundraiser night. And a big old
Oh, and of course, it is the Sunday fundraiser night. Every single day leads up to this night every single week, and tonight's fundraiser is for Razom for Ukraine. We have not hit the $1,000 mark before the stream started, but I'm pretty sure that is a slow start because the Least Spring Army has never missed a goal so far. Of course, Razom for Ukraine is one of the most amazing fundraisers that we've been able to support. It does a whole bunch of medical work. It also provides food for Ukrainian families that have been displaced so far in the war, and also those whose food security is not accomplished. It also does incredibly cool projects behind the scenes, like also providing scholarships to Ukrainian soldiers in the field who are now being put out of the service for one reason or another, of course, honorably discharged. It is an amazing nonprofit through and through, and that is the fundraiser that we are running tonight. And so if y'all would, make sure to support this tactical fundraiser as we ensure that Razom for Ukraine will be able to continue helping out the folks all around the nation of Ukraine, and to make sure that the Ukrainian government can focus their efforts onto the actual military and the war effort itself. But speaking of which, it is now time for us to get into the breaking news of tonight. And we've had a lot of it all over the place, all the way from the area of Robotyne and all the way up into the direction of Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Things have been popping off in just about every single area. It's really hard to even begin because while I say that Ukraine took a major village, and they have been moving into multiple areas today and fighting in them, so it is really hard pressed to pick a place to start first. But if we have to pick one, and we will have to pick one because we have to start the news somewhere, we are going to be moving into the village that was taken today, the village of Opytne. Opytne is a small little village. Well, small is relative, especially compared to what's around it. But here is Avdiivka, and here is the village of Opytne right here. It is a somewhat smaller village, still large enough to have some larger compounds and buildings within it, but it is certainly a village of great importance, sitting on the middle of the Donetsk plain, in between the area of Pervo-Mayske and also Avdiivka. It is one of the few built-up areas that really gives anyone a chance to hold this area and continue to push on into other directions. Specifically, the Donetsk airport, which has started to serve as a Russian logistics hub from what we've understood during this part of the war. Ukrainian forces had a stroke of luck, because many of y'all may know about this little video right here that just came out yesterday. So let me show y'all this thing, just to remind y'all real quick, because this becomes important, especially when we're talking about today. By the way, I found out that United 24 does not get a license for any of their music, so now we have to mute all of their clips that have music in them. But anyways, we can see that they are carrying the little flag, and I'm going to skip forward a little bit, because now y'all can see the Ukrainian flag getting ready to take off, flying off into the distance, and way up into the sky. A massive symbol of Ukrainian perseverance in the war, and also a promise that Ukrainian flags will also be flying over the actual ground of Ukraine here in the future. As that flag then disappeared into view on this video, something amazing happened. Every single Russian unit in the area of Opytne, which is where this flag was flown from, it took off from Avdiivka, and the winds blew it to the southeast. It flew from Avdiivka right over Opytne. And guess what happened, Matthew?
What happened?
Every single Russian on the ground started to shoot at the flag. And so the Ukrainians got the exact locations of every single Russian unit around the village of Opytne, the ones inside of the village of Opytne. Every single one of them gave away their locations, and that was what led to the Ukrainians taking the village today, is that the Russians tried to shoot down the Ukrainian flag. So it's almost like
So they ended up getting smothered by it, like we predicted yesterday, like the flag like dropped to the ground and covered them with it.
We sat there, just in case y'all are wondering what Matthew's talking about. Yesterday we were kidding around and joking about, knowing the Russians, they're going to do something about this flag that's going to end up being absolutely stupid and terrible for them. And that ended up being true, because in the attempt to shoot the flag down, they gave away every single position in the area. And that's why the Ukrainians took Opytne today, is because they were able to bring artillery fire directly onto their exact positions, even ones they had not known about up until that point. And then the infantry rolled in and just took the town. This happened about 4 or 5 hours ago at this point. And according to even a Russian Telegram channel, nationalists of the armed forces of Ukraine were able to capture the settlement of Opytne, which is not far from Donetsk airport. Now fighting is taking place on the outskirts of the airport. The situation is difficult, said Ion Gagin, advisor of the acting DPR. And I gotta tell you, the Russians are really gagging on the decision they made to try and shoot down the flag, because it did not go well for them at all. According to that Telegram post as well, the Ukrainians haven't just taken Opytne, they are now fighting directly on the outskirts of the airport itself, meaning that they have made it a lot farther than even the Ukrainians have been suggesting lately, as I believe it was the city governor of Avdiivka, the military governor, stated that Ukrainian forces had captured the village, but he didn't state anything more than that. We also got to see a little video clip that we're thinking may be from this area, and I have to preface this a great deal because we did a little bit of guesswork on this one. This is some GoPro footage from a unit called the Chosen Company. We have not heard of the Chosen Company on this channel before, and therefore we have never been able to locate this unit on a map. However, the footage appears to be incredibly recent and is also showing fighting within some kind of a largely destroyed village. There are very few places along the front line where Ukrainian soldiers could find themselves at this moment fighting inside of a village. And this is one of the few, which would be the village of Opytne. And so we're going to be showing all this clip, and we're saying that it comes from Opytne, but we're not entirely certain. But nevertheless, here is the GoPro footage from a soldier that was fighting inside of the ruins of a village. We still don't know if
somebody had to do it. I'm the chosen one.
I'm the chosen one. It's gonna be great. But anyways, here's the clip.
River!
What direction?
We can see the Foreign Legion soldiers in the Chosen Company firing in the direction of the Russian forces out this way. Also, nice little sight on that rifle right there.
Red building! Run out this way! June, come this... Get out of the...
We now hear Russian rifle fire returning. Now we see them trying to lay the Russians back down for a moment by laying down some suppressing fire. Now see him whipping out a nade. Tossing that thing.
Sit down. Light him up.
And when you see them firing into the darkness, the battle going on into the night in this clip.
Reloading.
This guy's look calm.
Yeah,
Reloading.
he's just light him up. Okay, everyone lay
Get to
low.
work.
Hang up, grenade.
Time for a break.
Oh no, kamikaze drone. Uh-oh. Hey, everyone calm down.
He's leaking.
We see them laying down some automatic fire with the AKs.
Reloading.
Man, this guy really is calm as a cucumber, though. Uh-oh. He whipped out the gat.
Oh.
Dude, the video clipped, and then the next thing you just see is high explosive. It's like, oh.
Fire in the hole.
This guy right here is cool as a cucumber. Nothing gets him excited. He picks up an RPG, fires it, fire in the hole. All right, there it goes.
Dude, he sits there and it wipes out an entire Russian company. He goes, "We've won. Yay." He's just like so calm about it all. But still.
They're like, dude, you fired an RPG. It was aight.
Dude, he's the kind of guy, man, who when he comes back to the States, he'll sit there and he'll watch the most impressive movie he's ever seen in his life. And you'll ask him, "So what do you think of it?" He'll go, "It was all right." And that's it. He's that guy. Like he's the most interesting man in the world, man. But anyways, wonderful to see the footage from the Chosen Company. We are assuming that was footage from the village of Opytne, but we can't entirely be sure. But one thing I can say is that while we can't be sure about what's been going on in the video footage of Opytne and the Chosen Company and where that was, one thing is for certain: the fundraiser has hit $1.3 thousand.
What?
And of course,
Damn.
absolutely wonderful. Hopefully, the fundraiser can keep up this kind of momentum and speed until we hit that $5,000 goal. The Lee Spring Army has never missed a fundraiser goal. It never has, and it never will. We will do everything within our power to ensure that. And also, by the way, I forgot that I haven't thrown in my $100 donation or dono of the night. And so really quickly, let me take a quick moment to do that while we move into the area of Krasnoarivka. And also let me go back really quickly and let me go on my stream, which is running right now. And so let me go right here and then let me click donate, show my name, throw in $100. My credit card information is, I'm just kidding, we're not giving that out on stream. But let me go and throw this in real quick. Usually we do this before the stream, but we had so much going on behind the scenes while we're counting down for the stream to begin, I actually wasn't able to do it until right now. But there's my $100. And so if y'all want to match me, it is $100 to match. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the city of Donetsk, where we also heard some explosions going on within the city. We're not exactly sure what these were from. It sounds mostly like artillery, but here's the clip. Looks like artillery, sounds like artillery, it must be artillery. Moving on from that, we also got to hear the sounds of heavy firefights and battles going on in the area of Staromykhailivka and also Krasnoarivka as well. The footage that we're about to see came from the area of Krasnoarivka, and it is the ambient noise of the battlefield today. This is actually filmed about 6 or 7 hours ago, and well, actually it was around 10 hours ago considering it was still daylight, but it's the afternoon in the video, and you can hear the sounds of a massive battle going on just a few miles down the road. And so with that, here's the clip. That is the sound of a massive amount of artillery bearing down onto the area, most likely of Staromykhailivka and also Krasnoarivka as well. From what we understand, it sounds as though an entire renewed Ukrainian offensive has begun in this area, and this artillery fire is either Russian artillery fire trying to stop the Ukrainian advance, or Ukrainian artillery fire helping the Ukrainians to begin to push forward. We're not entirely sure what it is, but it is incredibly loud and in incredibly high volume.
Damn, that's coming in fast.
Yeah, it sure is.
All of that's artillery shells?
I believe that might be some kind of incendiary. Actually, yeah, it looks like an incendiary round that's being fired into Krasnoarivka. So this is giving us a pretty good idea. It might be Russian artillery, but we really don't know what's out there. We don't know if those are Russians right over there or not. But all we know is that there's heavy shelling going on in the area. Dude, I swear, man, that was literally just the insert stock sound of artillery fire, this one sound right here. That one. That literally, that literally sounds like the stock footage noise of artillery fire. We can also hear the sounds of rifle fire in the distance, telling us that this artillery barrage is a part of the larger battle happening in this area. We can also see a slag heap out there in the distance. And with that, that's the end of the clip. That slag heap might actually give us a really good idea of where to geolocate this, and just for a quick moment, we will. So we know that this happened in the area of Krasnoyarivka, and if we look at this area, maybe we can find one of those slag heaps. This appears to be one of them. And then if we go over here, that's more of just like a pile of dirt. And then it appears that there may possibly... No, that's actually just a marsh. So this really is the only slag heap in the entire area. So going off of that, the incendiary rounds appear to have been landing around this area. And going off of all of this and geolocating it and doing all kinds of hocus pocus math and magic, which we don't do math, so it's largely magic for me, it appears that that was Russian artillery landing incendiary shells onto Ukrainian forces that may be advancing in this area or engaging in battle with the Russians in Staromikhayivka. This would also align with the Ukrainian offensive of Opytne and may be showing that the Ukrainians are attempting to destroy or close off this little gap in the Russian line that has been made since the beginning of the invasion of 2022. So based off of all that, that's kind of what we're getting at the moment. And very interesting to see that this may be another Ukrainian counteroffensive that is starting in another direction of the line. Of course, we can't get into much more than that. That may violate operational security. But moving on from all of these clips showing that things are really starting to kick off in Donetsk, we also have something that's kicking off inside of Russia. And this is something that's actually affecting us overseas. And I just wanted to show you all this to give you a little bit of a PSA to be aware and just know that this is what's going on out there and what they're starting to spread around. So, as many of y'all know, the Russians are very big into the internet propaganda sphere, and that's a way that they build soft power, and soft power is the way people look at your nation. And that's what's made many people think that the Russians are way stronger than they really are, even up until this present day. Their internet presence is massive. And it appears that the Russians are trying to extend their internet presence into straight-up propaganda clips that don't really make any sense. It's kind of like the eat your hamster kind of videos, but in a different sense and really stupid. But before we get to that, I have to congratulate the entire Lee Spring Army for hitting $2,000 29 minutes into the fundraiser. We are almost halfway there to 5,000 already, and I know the Lee Spring Army will hit it because we have never missed a fundraiser goal so far. But moving on into the clip from Moscow, or well, we located in Moscow, this is a video saying that people should stop Russian hate. And the example they're going to use in the video is just so stupid. So here's the clip.
That's mine. Look at him. Just a small one. Yeah. The way he spilled the milk and then he's...
Oh, it's a corgi. Oh, I feel so sorry
Hey.
for that corgi knowing he's living in
Sure is a
Russia.
corgi.
Dude, that corgi's about to become food here in like a few weeks because of how bad the economic situation is. I don't even know what kind of music they're playing, but here comes this guy, okay? And here's where the whole thing's about to go. Some of y'all may know this. This is a Siberian Husky. They're very precious dogs if you've ever been able to have one or meet one. They're very cute, very nice. What's ironic, though, is that this is going to be used as the Russian in this ad. If you know anything about the history of the Siberian Husky went extinct in Russia because of the purge in the 1930s by Joseph Stalin. The Husky was selected
really?
in the purge. Yeah, so there are no Siberian Huskies left in Russia unless if they were imported back in after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The only place that Siberian Huskies exist in larger populations is Alaska and the continental United States as well as Canada. Those are really the only places that larger Husky populations are found nowadays. Practically none of them are found in Russia anymore. So what's funny about this entire video and its premise is that they're using the Siberian Husky to represent Russia. And the Siberian Husky you can't even find in Russia anymore, where it actually came from, because it was purged in the 1930s. But anyways, let's get on with the clip. When you see him coming up to the house.
Oh, hi.
Evening.
Are you here for the dog's party?
Yep.
And who is this?
It's a Sandy, Siberian Husky.
Oh no, not a Siberian Husky. Good God, man. We need to beat that dog to death. Dude, even the dogs are shocked. Jesus Christ, man. This guy is a freaking Nazi, man, with a Siberian Husky. How dare you? This is just...
A Siberian Husky.
Oh my god.
Yes.
And you're here with them.
Well,
Sorry, there's no place for y'all.
Oh my god. Talk about some discrimination here. This man has a Siberian Husky. You know, people like this in the United States, they are taken outside and they are shot, at least according to the Russians. I just can't believe that this guy would have the audacity to take his Siberian Husky around with him in public. I mean, hell, that is almost irreprehensible as, you know, launching a Tomahawk missile into a neighborhood of people and just wiping out 100 of them. This is just sickening. So this guy's just completely taken aback. Of course, his dog date here is just completely offended, and he just doesn't know what to do. And now the dog is also sweet and nice. And also, did y'all notice that they've changed out the dog? Did y'all notice that? Like, the dog had a brown eye at the beginning of the video. Let me show y'all that, because this is a little bit of a continuity error. Okay, I swore it had a brown eye and a blue eye at the beginning. Okay, so I just got that wrong. So apparently the continuity was kept, and I just got it wrong.
Everybody's pointing out that the person did say y'all when they came to the door.
Yeah, they're trying to make it sound all southern. You know, oh, get the hell out of here. Oh, and look at the dogs. They're all so sad, too. And he's got to walk off with a Siberian Husky as the music swells. And look at that. The dogs don't want him to go. Oh, no. And now the epic music plays.
He's dangerous.
And the freaking Siberian Husky is dangerous. That woman just went up to the dog and pet it. Hang on, let me go back to that because I know I didn't miss-see that. I'm not tripping there. Okay, here we go. Yep, here it is.
And who is this?
it's a Sandy.
She pets the dog. And then they're gonna go, oh no, it's dangerous. Why would you pet the dog if it was a dangerous dog? And also, how in the hell is she, like, what, is she blind? She can't tell it's a Siberian Husky? Okay, like, just getting past the technicalities of this propaganda thing, we're gonna get back to the part where the dogs start freaking out and they go, stop, he's dangerous.
Stop! Han, he's dangerous. He's Russian.
He's Russian. Oh my god, but the guy isn't Russian. Like, I don't even know what this commercial's trying to get
I don't
at.
think anybody's ever said that about a Russian. Oh, watch out, they're dangerous. So I know they're drunk.
Oh no, watch out. He's going to slip and fall and bust his head open on the countertop because he's drunk. Oh,
watch out for those Russians. You know, they're killers. Oh, gosh. You know, they're experts, special forces.
Oh, watch out. The Gopnik's going to whip out the butterfly knife. Oh. And now all the dogs go running. Just a complete affront. And now look at them, they're all in shock. As the dogs all come out, it's a workers' revolt. They're all siding with the guy in his Siberian Husky. And they're doing tricks and crap, because that's what dogs do. Like, they had to hold one up for the camera. It doesn't even know what the hell's going on. And now they're all smiling. They all just went from, it's dangerous, it's a Russian, to now they love this guy. And then they have this statement, boundaries are in human heads. Aren't y'all the people that are wanting to genocide the Ukrainians? I mean, we just saw a soldier saying that the other day on the front lines, and now they're going to go, boundaries are in human heads.
I gotta admit that this is, like, so stupid, it's going over my head. I really don't understand where the hell this has gone or what the hell the message was in this at all.
I don't even know either. This is what's so stupid about it, though. This is their propaganda initiative. Stop spreading hate. Stop hating Russians. You know,
what the hell does that have to do with the dogs and the people and... Oh my god.
I don't even have to break this one down any further for y'all. This is how stupid Russian propaganda gets when it's just up front and in your face and they're actually trying to do it outright. Like, it's not your usual kind of little Reddit blog where some Russian shill or a bot comes in and talks about how great the Armada is. This is what Russian propaganda actually looks like in its raw and unfiltered form. There's no point in even analyzing it because it is just that stupid and senseless. But I had to show y'all that. I had to make y'all aware because if y'all see that around the internet, I want y'all to have y'all's first microdose of that here so that way you don't end up getting lethal amounts of cancer when you watch that later and it's just raw and unadulterated. But moving on from that, you know, while the Russians are saying stop the hate, and, you know, and they're saying that there's boundaries in people's heads, and they're trying to make the comparison in between dogs. Apparently, some Polish border guards ended up getting attacked today by the Belarusian army, apparently, on the border. I'll be reading this off for y'all for just a quick second. A group of unknown persons at the Belarusian border in Belarusian uniforms attacked Polish border guards, states the Polish Border Service. Sounds like they're not really stopping the hate. They're more so trying to beat up on some Polish dudes on the border, and I have a feeling that's probably going to be the only time they get to do that, because the next time, the Polish are probably going to be there with rifles instead, not just standing around with some batons. But
So
still,
they stoned them?
no, they said they got into some kind of like a fist fight with them or something like that. I'll load it up here again. It takes like...
I saw on Twitter earlier, it said that the Belarusians wearing masks tried to stone the Polish people at the border, like in the old times, like BC.
Really?
Yeah, you know, like biblical days, like stoning somebody or something.
Man, well, I don't know a lot about that, but I know a guy in Minnesota who would know a lot about that. And Hal Rose just threw in a $333 donation to Razum for Ukraine, getting us up to $2.7 thousand. We are over halfway to the fundraiser goal. And of course, I hope that we reach it fairly soon. I don't know if we're going to be reaching it here in this first hour, but hopefully we will. But moving on from the Belarusian-Polish border news, because that is what it is, and we haven't gotten any official responses from the Polish government beyond that statement from the border guards, we're now going to be moving on really quickly into a little bit of a sideshow, or a side note, into this entire Ukraine war ordeal. Because Ukraine isn't really an isolated incident with its war with Russia. Russia does have a little bit of a Russian world surrounding it, and some countries that kind of still fall within that idea or that sphere where they kind of look towards the Russians, or their problems were created because of the Russians at some point in the last 100 years or so. And two of those countries are Armenia and Azerbaijan. We haven't been covering this a lot on this channel, but since the Nagorno-Karabakh War of 2020, where the two went to war with each other, and then into the war in about, I think, 3 months' time, there have been some very strong tensions in between the two, specifically over territory that is claimed by another group that is actually culturally of a whole entire other group. Not trying to get into specifics or anything, because it's a very tense topic in between the Armenians and Azerbaijanis, but we saw something very interesting today. Leading on about 3 days ago, about 2 or 3 Armenian or Azerbaijani border guards, I'm trying to remember the story correctly, were killed in a border firefight in between the two. It was a border clash, and 2 to 3 soldiers ended up being killed in it. Today, we're seeing Azerbaijani vehicles moving somewhere around the border in an unknown location with F markers placed onto the side of the trucks. Y'all might know of a place that y'all have seen this sort of thing before, which is Ukraine, where the Z started to become prominently put onto many vehicles before another war began, and this appears to be what the Azerbaijanis are putting onto their vehicles as offensive markings. So that way, if they march into Armenia, they will be able to identify friend from foe based off of if they have an F on the vehicle or not. We don't know if they're going to be going to war yet. The situation is certainly getting incredibly tense, and the fact that they are painting those symbols onto the side of their vehicles, it may be showing that there will be a second war going on in the general area, and the Russians usually have a bit of an invested interest in what goes on in this area. The last time the Nagorno-Karabakh War happened in 2020, it actually ended due to a Russian brokering of peace. So the Russians will probably be heavily involved in this as well, but then the big question is, will they be? Because it's not like the last time where there wasn't really anything going on in 2020 except for, a plague. Now they are involved in a massive ground war in Ukraine, and there's not really a lot for them to spare or dedicate in attention to what's going on in Armenia and Azerbaijan. But with that, I'm not going to put any more notes or comments on that. I'm seeing someone asking the channel, which side is good? I'm not even going to get into that because it's a very complicated thing culturally with Armenia and Azerbaijan. So we'll be, trying to skirt around that for now. And when a war breaks out, we're probably just going to neutrally report on that war because the cultural implications and everything are so nuanced between both sides. It's very difficult to get into and say that someone has a right side or not, really. But moving on from that, we're now going to be quickly hopping right back up towards the Ukrainian area, and also we have a very interesting clip that was put out today. This one was actually put out by none other than United24. So y'all know y'all are in for a treat, an impressive one, that y'all are about to be watching the Ukrainians take on the Black Sea. The Black Sea is a very major interest for every single nation that borders the sea, and the Ukrainians have been talking for the battle for the Black Sea, among many other things today. But before we go into this news, I have to say really quickly that we are at $2,700, $2,701 exactly on this fundraiser.
Hey, we're over halfway there. Let's go.
We're over halfway there at 40 minutes in. And of course, I hope, I'm not going to call a general order yet. No general order is going to be called at the moment. But I hope that we are able to get really close to $5,000 before this video ends. It is 8 minutes long, and it's incredibly interesting throughout. So hopefully we will be incredibly close, but we're not going to call a general order just yet. But without further ado, here is the video on the Black Sea that was made by none other than the amazing folks at United24.
Black Sea.
He's not wearing a Nike shirt.
And he isn't, dude. He lost the brand deal.
Oh, man.
But
It happens.
But here's the clip.
Approximately 436,000 square kilometers and is bordered by 6 countries: Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, and Turkey. Its strategic location at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles Straits, and also the large rivers Danube and Dnipro, has made it a crucial maritime gateway in an economical, political, and military sense for the past hundreds of years. This strategic waterway facilitates the transport of essential goods like various types of grains and steel. Because of this, what happens in the Black Sea essentially affects the whole world. In 2019 alone, according to Statista, 464 million metric tons of cargo passed through the more than 60 Black Sea ports. A large part of this cargo came from or went to Ukraine. According to the European Trade Commission, before the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine accounted for 10% of the world's wheat market, 15% of the corn market, and 13% of the barley market. With between 40 and 50% of world trade, it was also the main player in the sunflower oil market. Welcome to Talking Tactics. This week, we want to first outline why and how the Black Sea is so important, not only for Kyiv, but for the entire world, but also how Ukraine has managed to somehow level the playing field in the battle for the Black Sea by developing the world's first naval drone fleet that we want to introduce to you. But first, the most important question: why does Russia want to control the Black Sea? Now, the financial aspect, as well as its strategic and imperialist aspirations, are the 3 underlying factors driving Russia to gain absolute, or at least substantial, control of assets and trade routes in the Black Sea. If it isn't something obvious, like stealing the almost 6 million tons of Ukrainian grain harvested last year in the occupied territories, that's according to the US Congress report from last June, it's about being able to exert control and bargain, not only with Ukraine, but essentially with anyone. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 not only nearly decimated the Ukrainian navy, but also allowed Russia to bolster its military presence in the region, altering the balance of power significantly. Now, when Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the Black Sea once again became a battlefield. Ukraine had to mine parts of its coastline to block Russian landing parties. You might remember the battle for Snake Island, where the phrase "Russian warship, go fuck yourself" became an iconic symbol of Ukrainian
Damn, son.
Dang, man, he just said that so strongly. I think we're going to get an age restriction, man. Man, what is that?
Snake Island was liberated in last year, giving Ukraine back a strategic foothold in the Black Sea. But Russia used and still uses the Black Sea to launch cruise missiles targeting Ukrainian cities, to block ships and trade, and just generally doing what Russia does best, being a huge nuisance to everyone. In July 2022, the Initiative on the Safe Transportation of Grain and Foodstuffs from Ukrainian Ports, also called the Black Sea Grain Initiative, was signed. It was kind of a compromise reached through Turkish mediation. The agreement regulated grain exports from both countries, Ukraine and Russia, and played a vital role in stabilizing global food markets. Russia unilaterally pulled out of the agreement in July 2023, blaming Ukraine for attacking its ships and harbors, but more on that in a second. The cancellation of the agreement sent shockwaves through international grain markets, causing uncertainty and disruption. Russia is at the root of this problem, but because things like wheat and corn are traded as future commodities on, for example, the Chicago Board of Trade, it means that when Russia disrupts the global wheat trade, private investors or traders on the free market then basically speculate on the future of the wheat price, and essentially profit off this global food insecurity and atrocity, causing prices to jump even further. Despite the threats posed by Russia, Ukraine has been trying to maintain a somewhat secure sea corridor for international shipping, guiding vessels from and to ports like Reni and Ismail in the southwestern tip of Ukraine to Romanian and Bulgarian waters, which are two NATO states. The so-called Danube River Delta, which is accessible to larger ships through the 63-kilometer-long Salina Channel, right now constitutes a vital lifeline, crucial for ensuring the safety of commercial shipping and maintaining access to the Black Sea's trade routes for Ukraine and its international partners. Although both ports were already targeted by Russia, President Zelensky commented, even without the Russian Federation, everything must be done so that we can use this Black Sea corridor. We are not afraid. We have been approached by companies that own ships. They said that they are ready. But despite all the bravery and vigor, it will be an extreme challenge to find a long-term sustainable solution, as insurance companies, for example, have already tripled their rates for ships passing through this region. It is a considerable risk. The prime example is the almost pirate-like boarding of a Palau-flagged dry ship in the Black Sea by Russian special forces in mid-August. What can be done to win the battle for the Black Sea and secure a safe passage for ships bringing food to the world market from Ukraine? Ukraine has been fighting back since the beginning, like using the homemade missile Neptune to sink the Russian cruiser Moskva in August 2022. Also from the air, with drones like the Turkish Bayraktar. Ukraine has managed to significantly disrupt Russian operations on the coast, as you can see in this video where a drone decimates a Russian landing party. But nothing has transformed the dynamics of the battle for the Black Sea more than Ukraine's development and deployment of naval drones. In lightning speed, the country has built up its own naval drone fleet. Although the concept and idea are not new, and Ukraine is not the first country to develop such a drone, it is the first to use them in an actual combat situation. On October 29, 2022, the first naval attack in history was carried out exclusively by unmanned means. Naval drones attacked the Russian fleet in Sevastopol. According to the website of President Zelensky, they hit 3 ships of the Russian Federation, in particular the flagship Admiral Makarov. The track record of these drones so far is incredibly impressive. So impressive, in fact, that a country with a formidable navy such as Russia has had to seriously reconsider its maritime strategy. According to the state news agency Ukrinform, there are currently no Russian cruise missile carriers in the Black Sea. Be aware, though, that this is a situational fact and that the positioning of ships is bound to change at any given moment. The attack on the Kerch Bridge in July and the attack on the Elenigorsky Garnyak beginning of August near the port of Novorossiysk, which is roughly 675 kilometers from the closest Ukrainian-held shores, as well as the attack on the tanker Sig, are 3 further examples. Although, according to the chief of military intelligence in Ukraine, Kyrylo Bodanov, around 60 to 70% of these drones are actually neutralized by Russia before they hit their target, the success rate of 30% has been effective enough for Ukraine to broadly expand this sector of their navy. On August 24th, President Zelensky announced the creation of the 385th Separate Brigade of Maritime Unmanned Special Purpose Systems. The fleet consists of an unknown number, for obvious security reasons, of unmanned surface vehicles, USVs, and unmanned underwater vehicles, or UUVs. The first-generation maritime drone used on the attack on October 29, 2022, was basically a mix between a canoe and a jet ski. In fact, the body was originally a jet ski that Ukrainian engineers remodeled. This idea has been developed further, with weaponized and automated jet skis spotted close to Russian waters. Next is the Magura, supposedly used in the attack on the Elenigorsky Garnyak late August. Basically a bigger and more powerful version of the first generation, with a maximum speed of around 42 knots, a range of around 830 kilometers, and a payload capacity of 320 kilograms. Next is the Sea Baby, which is basically the XXL version of the Magura, with a
Baba Yaga.
stunning payload
Everything that's big and scary now is just a Baba Yaga. Every single one of them. It's the rules.
capacity of around 860 kilograms. As opposed to USVs, UUVs that move underwater are harder to detect. Also, as you can imagine, if you cause damage to a ship, apart from destroying the rudder, the most damage you can do is to the hull, so the part that is underwater. Ukraine has presented the Toloka TK-150, which has an electric motor, and also the Marichka, a black tubed unmanned underwater submarine. So, what can Russia do to protect itself from this new threat? Well, different media are suggesting that Russia is sinking old ships and spanning fisher nets in an attempt to create an underwater wall, protecting the Kerch Bridge and Strait. Apart from that, they're probably working hard on new
wait a
ways
minute.
to
Go back to
defend
that
themselves.
map real quick.
Oh, yeah. This one.
I'm no expert here, but I see a way around that.
That's it. Yeah, I was like,
Yup, see, baby, right around the corner.
But I bet you in real life they actually probably have a net going from that barge to the land. Probably they're just not showing it in this one.
It's Russians after all. They probably don't. They
You know
probably
what-
think this is enough blyat.
You know what they need to do? They just need to make a drone that can hop over the net. You know, like that little like jet ski thing. You remember what I'm talking about, Matthew? Where it has the fins, where it can like fling itself out of water.
Hydrofoil.
I think so. It's the little dolphin-looking jet ski thing that's semi-submersible. You know what I'm talking about? Where it can like go underwater a little bit and then fling itself up and out of the water for a jump. Like make something like that. I'm sure that will work.
Maybe so. Maybe
protecting
so.
the
Just
Kerch
jump right
Bridge
over
and
it.
Strait.
Yeah.
Apart from that, they're probably working hard on new ways to defend themselves, but until they come up with something really useful, it looks like Ukraine will manage to reassert its maritime presence even further. However, even if naval drones have given Kyiv a better playing hand, the continuing brutal invasion of Ukraine causes the region's future to remain uncertain, with global consequences at stake. Thanks for watching Talking Tactics. Hit like and subscribe, and see you next week.
And that's the end of the clip from United 24, but a very interesting look into Ukrainian actions inside the Black Sea and what they have been trying to continue on down there. Of course, it is a more so quieter part of this war is what's going on navally. Of course, everyone talks about the grain deal, but beyond that, nobody really talks about what the Ukrainian military is doing and what the Russian Navy is doing out of the Black Sea to fight each other. But moving on from that, and on up into our location unknowns, making sure we had nothing to cover in Kyiv first, we've had some wild ones today. And I usually say that every single night, but some of the ones that we are about to be watching in this location unknown are truly insane and incredibly wild to say the least. But before we get to that, we are 52 minutes in and we have reached $3,200 on the fundraiser. We've made a pretty good length. We have $1,800 to go, just about until we reach the fundraiser goal tonight, and I hope that we do make it. And of course, I'm trying to sound optimistic because it seems as though the fundraiser is going a little bit slower than it normally has been. The Lee Spring Army has, as a fact of life, never actually missed a fundraiser goal so far, and I hope that tonight is not the first time that it does such a thing. We have been noticing, of course, as the war has been going on, that support for fundraisers has become less and less, largely as a reoccurring trend throughout the war. But one thing that has always been a certainty is that the Lee Spring Army has always reached every single fundraiser goal. And the Lee Spring Army is one of the few communities on YouTube that actively continues to help out Ukraine in massive ways. We are around $1.2 million raised in its entirety in support of Ukraine since the start of the war, and I hope that we are able to reach the $5,000 goal tonight. Trying not to call a general order right now, just trying to see if we can get close to it before that, but hopefully we can reach the $5,000 goal. But moving into our location unknowns, we have had some incredibly interesting clips today. But before we get into that, Matthew's got some interesting things that he wants to cover. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so before we jump into our several polls to address, let's go ahead and call off our top donors thus far of the night. That has helped us reach $3.2 thousand of the $5,000 goal. And up first, we had the largest one of the night. We have a $333 donation from Hal Rose, who's a channel legend, as y'all know. And thank you very much, Hal, for being very generous and helping to carry the fundraiser tonight. Also, we have a 100 from Blue Flame 777 LSA, as well as Alex Yurchenko, Bobby Ibarra, Drunky Monkey, Bob Anon, and then we have a 50 from Greg Carrier, Jay Byrne, Old Warrior, Sika Hunter, Axel K, Maximo Grillon, Paramecium, Steve Watkins, at work, not at home, at work. And we also have a 50 from Justice Ryan, a 50 from Dad Good, a 50 from Sarter, and a 50 from Cliff H and Gene Kustra. And I believe that is all of the top donors for now. But of course, as we always say, big shout out and big thanks to everyone that donated because it is adding up. We still have a little ways to go, but we are getting there. So, Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank everyone so much who has supported the fundraiser tonight. While we have not reached the $5,000 goal yet, many of y'all have continued to support Ukraine in massive ways, everyone that we could and could not name off, and we have gotten up to $3.4 thousand at this moment. And I got to thank everyone.
Hey, Jimmy McNoodle put in 100 pounds.
Man, he be manoodling, but I got to thank everyone so much once again for helping this fundraiser to get to where it is. Even if it doesn't hit $5,000, it is still absolutely incredible to know that we have been able to make it up to $3.4 thousand. But I know this for certain. I have a huge faith that the Lee Spring Army will hit $5,000 before the end. And I've seen a lot of people saying that they are ready for this. And so we are going to call it in. Let me whip out my phone real quick so that way I can make sure to be a part of it, because a general order is going to be called right now. General order number, and I'm trying to think of what number it even is anymore. Number 24? We're going to call out general order number 24. General order number 24 is now in effect. If you have $5 to throw into the fundraiser, throw it in right now, because we are going to get this fundraiser over $5,000 at least. Because one thing is for certain, the Lee Spring Army is never going to stop supporting Ukraine. We are going to support Ukraine until the very end of this war. This isn't even the enforcer channel if we can't reach or pass the goal every single night. We have done that since the very beginning of the war. We have run at this point 75 fundraisers, I believe, or more than that, in support of the folks over there in Ukraine. And that's what this whole entire channel largely runs for. Every single 6-day cycle on this channel, every single week, is just building up towards this Sunday fundraiser every single day. And of course, we do this as a job, and we do this to support ourselves. And so 5 days of the week are, to help us to be able to get along. But this is what the channel is about, is helping out the folks in Ukraine through supporting the nonprofits that are operating over there. And it looks like the general order is taking off. We're at $4.4 thousand. We only have $600 to go.
Son.
And we are taking off. And I hope that we are able to reach this $5,000 goal tonight, because it means a lot to me that we always reach the goals and we are always able to have a big impact in Ukraine. And I know that the fundraiser is a whole of Lee Spring Army approach, but it's a big thing to me. Like, the concept of not reaching a fundraiser goal, to me personally, and not, being able to help out as an entire channel, is actually something that makes me, kind of a little sad and kind of depressed. But I know that we are going to reach it, because we only have less than $500 to go. We have $480 to go, and so I know we're going to make it. Now it's less than $300. Let's see how much it is. It is 200. Well, actually, I think it's about 250. Oh wait, now it is 250 for sure. $250 to go.
We hit goal. Let's go.
Hey, we did it. Absolutely amazing. Someone threw in 675 Canadian dollars anonymously, and we just passed the fundraiser goal. $5.6 thousand have been raised in support of Razum for Ukraine, and the Lee Spring Army will once again be helping to save the lives of folks over there in Ukraine. This is what this channel is all about, because we have been covering this war for 564 days, and many of y'all have been here with us for 560 days at least. Some of y'all have been here since the very start, 564 days of war. We have seen everything. I have truly seen everything. Like just today, when I was putting together this news, and this is something I don't really tell y'all much about, and I keep largely on the down low, I watched several Ukrainian soldiers end up losing their lives today, actually, on film. One of them stepped onto a landmine and died instantly. And it's something that I don't really talk about much, because we always try and keep things very positive and lighthearted on this channel. And while I always make sure to do that, I also have a pretty good understanding of what's going on over there, because I see most of the clips we don't get to show at all on this channel. And that's why Sunday fundraisers mean a great deal to me. But I got to thank everyone so much once again for hitting $6,000. I think we're actually $6,002 on the fundraiser tonight, and I gotta thank all of y'all so much once again for helping to save the lives of folks over there in Ukraine. But without further ado, we gotta get into the polls. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
And also, real quick, big shout out to Red217994 for putting in a 100. As well as BC Skyman, who put in a 100 as well, along with Randy Tosto and Ron Anderson. And we also have a 50 from Dion Yurchenko, as well as Fly Equals Fly.
Hey!
And a ton of channel legends right there just listed off. And once again, huge thanks. $6,000. We just raised a couple thousand in minutes. LSA is very strong when it comes to fundraisers, and we've never missed a goal. And as always, a big old...
And then, I thank everyone we just called out right there who just threw in support. Also, great to see the Fly Eagles Fly is with us tonight. We've been wondering where you've been, because we always know you as the Eagles guy, and he is here with us tonight, and so great to hear. And I gotta thank everyone so much once again for helping out this fundraiser and helping to save the lives of folks over there in Ukraine. Razum for Ukraine does amazing work over there. I can't recommend them enough. They do literally anything under the sun. They provide communications equipment. They provide food to Ukrainian families. They provide medical services, among many other things. And so thank you to every single one of y'all so much once again for having massive hearts and continuing to support these fundraisers, because the support is going over there and helping to save people's lives. And so thank you to everyone in the Lee Spring Army so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to get on into those sought-after polls. And so, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the first poll says Russia has begun, quote-unquote, expanding its military bases near the Finnish border. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 58% said not good. Russia is testing NATO again. 25% said, it seems like nothing to me. 11% said it's routine. Russian military upgrades, if you can say the Russian ever upgrade their military. 6% said unsure. So on this one, I would say that is not good. They could expand any military base that they want across their country if they chose to do so, but they're choosing to expand the ones right on the border of Finland. So obviously that is intended to send a message. And for the Russians to be upgrading anything, they had to scrounge some money and resources together to get that done. So obviously it's not just by happenstance, it was on purpose. So once again, we see the Russians doing that. And for the 11% that said routine Russian military upgrades, they only downgrade, they don't go up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is somewhat concerning. It's an understandable approach by the Russians, though. Usually I say what they're doing is uncalled for and reprehensible, but considering that Finland is now a full NATO member, it is a natural Russian response to start building up military bases along that part of the border, considering that NATO is the direct adversary of the Russians. Still, however, whenever the Russians do something like that, we have to meet it with an equal or even larger response. And so I believe that the United States should request that we build permanent bases inside of Finland, and we also begin to build some of our overseas bases in Finland. I also have a feeling that that would be very popular with the U.S. military. And you know something, I'm actually going to tell you all this. We usually don't talk about mainstream news stuff of any kind, whether it comes from Fox, CNN, CBS, ABC. But there was an interesting little clip that came out from CBS today that where they actually talked to General Mark Milley, which y'all may know on this channel. We're not really big fans of Mark Milley. But listening to that interview today was fairly interesting and insightful. And also what was really bizarre to see is that if y'all look at the stuff that the folks in that part of the Pentagon were looking at on their computer screens, they were largely looking at the exact same stuff we're looking at on stream right now. Hell, we've even gotten some people behind the scenes who tell us that some of those folks inside the Pentagon actually watch this show and gather a little bit of information from this show, among many others on YouTube. If any of them are watching, I have a feeling that if I was to ask them directly, they would probably say, out of anywhere you could be stationed in the world at a military base like Japan, South Korea, Germany, Finland would probably be a #1 vacation spot. Finland is a very nice country, it's a great place, and it would also be good to have U.S. soldiers stationed there permanently at permanent military bases, so that way we can ensure that the most northerly regions of the NATO alliance also have the same security and assurances that the rest of the NATO alliance on mainland Europe down here also has as well. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, some people are asking, why do I not like Milley? One thing I always like to say before I even begin saying this is that most folks, while you can end up not liking them, they're usually likable people if you meet them in person. Very few people are just straight up assholes or unenjoyable people to be around. You can usually find something, a positive attribute to say, they're nice people. And I'm sure that if you meet Milley in real life, he is probably a very nice person. Probably someone you could have a good conversation with. And when he was on that CBS interview today, he actually didn't seem like that much of an unlikable person, really. He seems like he has a pretty decent personality. But the reason why I somewhat dislike Milley is because of some of his actions he's taken under the this administration, the prior administration of the United States. It seems as though sometimes he's a maverick or a loose cannon that just kind of goes and does things against the wishes of the sitting presidents of the United States, both of them, not just one. And that's something that is somewhat concerning to me as a chain of command sort of situation. And also sometimes the statements that are made about Ukraine are also sometimes concerning as well, or clearly untrue given the information that we have received. So that's the reason why we dislike Milley. Not saying I dislike him as a person. I want to make that clear because a lot of people always try and make things personal nowadays. It's not a personal dislike of Milley because of who he is. It's a dislike of Milley for the statements he's made and also his sometimes assertions of the chain of command and not deferring to the president, but sometimes going and doing things that he wants to do on his own, regardless of what the current president and the former president have both specifically requested, stated, or making as their goals. And so
I generally just don't like him because he's a political figure basically, and he's in the military. And the chiefs of staff are a political appointment, but they're supposed to remain neutral. And he's several times gotten right into the middle of politics, which they're not supposed to do.
And also, I see some people, and this is something that I have to disagree with strongly in the chat. Some people are saying, oh, well, he should have just disregarded this one president, but the other president is different. And people have actually been saying that for the current president and the former president. The U.S. government does not work off of that principle. That's how we end up not having a government. When you are in the military, it is not your role to say, well, I disagree politically with the current sitting president. I'm going to do what I want. That is something that you're not supposed to do. The military is completely an apparatus of the government, and they fall under the authority of the commander-in-chief, which is the president of the United States. Regardless of who that president is, whether you agree or disagree with him, the role of the military is to follow the orders of the government, and by extension, the president of the United States himself. So the fact that a general will go and disregard orders from a president, both of them at the moment, and regardless of your political affiliations, it is something that I do not encourage or endorse whatsoever. I'd condemn those kinds of actions because that's how you end up starting to lose control of the government and also control of the military as well, which will eventually lead to further degradations of the U.S. government and ultimately lead to some very difficult times in the future. That is just a natural evolution of those kinds of moves becoming a standard. So that's kind of my take on that. I know a lot of people nowadays don't really view the government as that anymore, or the military or any institution in the government. Everyone views that they should all be partisan and try and screw the president over if they agree or disagree with him. I'm not into that idea right now. Well, I'm not into that idea at all. And to say their name specifically, the General Milley should follow the orders issued by President Biden to a T. He should also follow the orders issued by President Trump to a T. That is the role of a general in the military. If you get orders issued or there is a general a general policy being implemented by a president, you have to follow those orders without question. You cannot go and willy-nilly pick and choose who you want to follow and what you're going to do. That's not how the chain of command works. And so
I'm kind of surprised actually, because technically you can get into whether or not a order is lawful or unlawful, but in reality, though, they really can't make a subjective determination as to whether or not they're going to carry out an order, because that is a very slippery slope, because, it's subjective. There's no objective standard for that. So I know some folks are saying, well, there's certain circumstances where they need to determine if they can follow the order, but in reality, they really can't do that. That's not the way it can work. Otherwise, the military will take over, essentially. It's essentially a coup.
And also, I see people saying, do not follow illegal orders. The thing is, though, is that, when people say that, no president at the moment has issued from one president to the other, and I'm not going to be getting into exact details, but as far as foreign policy goes and the situations that we've seen Milley contradict the president in, none of the orders that were being given were illegal orders. We're not going to be going into that any further, but I'm going to say this: no president that was sitting said, let's go over somewhere and just start genociding a group of people with the U.S. military. No one's ever done or said that, so none of the orders were illegal from either president. Like, for example, we'll go into an exact detail for a moment. The fact that apparently the balloons flying over the United States, the Chinese balloons, the president had not been apprised of the situation while the balloon was flying over the state of Wyoming, that is a serious security concern. That the commander-in-chief of the United States had not been apprised of the situation and shows that there is a breakdown of the chain of command. That is something that I find incredibly serious, and that's something that should be looked into further, and Milley should be investigated for. That's not refusing to inform him because it would be illegal to inform the president. That's something that it was his duty to inform the president of. It was a concerning situation, and the president needs to be apprised of everything going on. And I know
And
that
also, another thing, real quick, I saw someone say, aren't you supposed to follow orders and then file an objection of the orders afterwards? And that seems to be the thing that's supposed to happen. If an order seems unlawful, you can lodge an objection to it, but you can't, subjectively decide in the moment as an order is issued that I'm going to not follow that order, or otherwise you can get court-martialed. But we're not seeing that, though. People are disobeying orders and they're just going about their normal business.
and that's also true as well. And to go into another situation, when the Chinese situation back in 2019 was escalating greatly, and there was a economic trade war going on in between the United States and the People's Republic of China, there was also a quieter military standoff that was happening in the Pacific, and against the wishes of the president's orders at that time, Milley went and then communicated with the Chinese in secret, from what we understand, saying that there was no concern and they don't even need to be worried about what the United States is doing, which is a direct violation of the chain of command in that regard. So we have two instances under two administrations where things were done that clearly were not that on key, and that's largely what I disagree with, is that there were violations of the chain of command in both of those instances. And also, I see someone say, breaking the politics rule, no, because the thing is that we can go into politics when things are addressed fairly, and this is a very fair address, because this is something that we've been seeing happening as a trend under two different presidencies of two different political affiliations. This isn't a partisan take. This is one that's saying that there is a serious concern that is starting to tear away the fabric of the chain of command of the executive branch. Not a partisan thing, but a more so administrative side of things. It's somewhat concerning. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. That's why I generally dislike Milley. But as a person, he seems like an okay guy. It's just that the things he's done I don't necessarily agree with. But with that, we are on into the next poll.
All right, and moving into our next poll, it is actually about Milley, believe it or not. And it says, U.S. General, which is Milley, says that Ukraine has only 30 days left on the offensive before winter hinders it. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 41% said he's wrong, Ukraine can fight in the winter. 34% said he's right, time draws near. 14% said I can see both sides to this, and 11% said unsure. And on this one, I would have to actually agree with them that the wintertime will hinder the offensive greatly. But it's not going to mean the end of Ukraine's offensive as a whole. And I think some folks misunderstood what he was saying on that to mean that he meant the entire offensive was going to come to a screeching halt, which it won't, because Ukraine has some pretty good winter gear now, thanks to the West. So, even though Milley is not a favorite on the channel, in this instance, I don't think he's wrong. But Enforcer, what say you?
Milley's actually not wrong about that statement at all. That is something that he is correct in. That's something that we were talking about greatly for a long time last year, is Rasputitsa seasons, which is when the ground becomes so muddy and so sludge-like you can't really operate a army in it. And that happens during the early spring and the mid-fall. And the Rasputitsa is coming around. It's going to be coming around most likely this year around mid to late October. And once the grounds become Rasputitsa-like, it's impossible to conduct any larger offensive operations because armor can't operate efficiently. For armor to operate efficiently, you have to be able to operate it in a wider spread than down a single highway. So if the Ukrainians try to conduct their offensive, and once the Rasputitsa begins, all of their armor forces are going to be concentrated, for example, at Robotyne, along a single highway in between Robotyne and Novopropivka. That is not conducive to any kind of offensive actions whatsoever. That creates a turkey shoot, which will lead to high casualties, and there will also be no support for the infantry that are in the fringes between the villages like Robotyne and Robove. The only support they'll be able to rely on is artillery, and artillery can't deal with everything, and they'll probably also overload the amount of artillery orders that the batteries are given, because the infantry in the fields will not have tanks to call on to support them. They will have artillery alone, and that means all of the artillery orders are going to be coming in like there's no tomorrow, and they'll probably overload the artillery batteries, and they won't be able to get to all of the orders, meaning that higher casualties will also be taken by the infantry in the field. So overall, this offensive has about 60 more days until the weather becomes impermissible for larger offensive actions, and then they'll have to wait until the winter weather comes around, which will still be very difficult to fight in, but the ground will have solidified enough to allow for larger armored actions to occur in that part of the front for an offensive to rekindle itself. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for now, so we're moving on to our 3 questions from the live chat. And up first, we have one from Duncan VR, who says, do you think Russia wants to attack Romania?
No, no, probably not. Romania is a NATO member, and while Russia loves to talk a lot, they can't really do anything to NATO members. And we can see that very easily with the Baltic countries, because Putin has made it clear at the beginning of this war in 2022 that the ambitions of the Russians don't lie within Ukraine alone. It lies within Ukraine, Moldova, a part of Poland, Belarus, and the Baltics as well, and also Finland. And we haven't seen their ambitions extend into the Baltics, which the Baltics actually would have been easier to fight than Ukraine would have ever been, because they're 3 separate countries. Both of them have incredibly small militaries compared to what the Russian military is, and also they're going to be a lot more limited because of the amount of ground they're going to be fighting over. It's just a smaller area with a smaller military, going to be a lot easier to take care of. But we didn't see the Russians invade the Baltics first, because the Baltics are a lot more difficult to fight through, because you would have to also fight the United States and the rest of the NATO alliance if you invaded those countries, because they have protection from NATO. While NATO seems to be somewhat soft on responses to small Russian provocations like drones exploding on Romanian land to the south of the Danube, the reaction would be incredibly severe if the Russians were to launch a full land invasion of a Baltic country. Make no mistake, that is where the line will be drawn. So, going off of that, that's why we haven't seen them attack the Baltics, and that's also why they wouldn't want to attack Romania either, is because Romania is a NATO country, and that means the United States is nearby. If anyone is to be feared in the NATO alliance, there are 2 countries that I would go towards. It's the United States and Poland at this point. Those are largely the 2 most major militaries inside of the NATO alliance, and I know a lot of people in Britain and Germany and France are about to go, oh, wait a minute, what about our militaries? They used to be impressive. Yeah, they used to be impressive, but the thing is that the British right now have the smallest army they've ever had in 300 years. That's kind of a little wild when you think about it. That means that the last time their army was this size, it was in the 1750s, and it's getting a little concerning at this point, because while the British are certainly seeing what's going on in Ukraine and they're trying to react to it, they aren't upping their military spending a lot. It's kind of a little bit of a smaller increment than really everyone else. And the UK is going through some economic challenges. Really, everyone in the world is going through some economic challenges right now. The West is faring it a lot better than everyone else, however. But I still think that every single NATO country, Germany, Britain, France, all of the major power players, especially the major economic power players like those 3, need to see that this is going to be an issue that we need to keep on top of. We don't need to let the Russians get an idea that any NATO member would be weak and they're relying entirely on America. Every single ally needs to be as strong as the other, so that way we can all go forward onto the battlefield and meet the Russians, instead of the United States and Poland having to meet the Russians, and then everyone has to play catch up through the rest of the war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, but no, Romania is probably not wanting to be invaded by, well, Russia is probably not wanting to invade Romania. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the second question.
This one goes to Wandering, who says, I was wondering, with all the rivers in Ukraine, why don't we see more riverine Navy videos, and how many of Ukraine rivers are navigable?
Most Ukrainian rivers are navigable to some extent. Really, the Dnipro is, of course, the major one. Some other rivers, for example, let me try and get this one. The Vorska River are probably not navigable, because I think their width is like 50 feet. Let me check. Actually, it's around 98 feet, so it's possibly navigable, but hardly. Most rivers in Ukraine aren't really navigable rivers. Very few of them will be. The Ba River down here at Mykolaiv, that's a navigable river through some of it, but not much of it. There's very few of them that really are entirely navigable. The reason why we don't see a lot of brown water warfare going on is because the only place you can really have that happen is down here in the Kherson-Novikakhovka area, and also out to the Kimber and Spit. So you don't really see a lot of action, because that theater of the war is just so small, and you really can't extend it to the rest of Ukraine. Really, rivers, as far as the war goes, the only thing that rivers pose in this war is a barrier that an army has to cross. This is a great place to make a defensive line. For example, at Kupiansk, we can already see that the Ukrainians have created a defensive line along, and let me make sure I get the name of the rivers correct, the Oskol River, near Zhorovchina. by just setting up their forces along this ridge, looking down on the river, and just keeping them there. They pose great defensive barriers and also obstacles for an offensive to cross over, but beyond that, it doesn't really allow for a lot of river warfare. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well and give a little bit of an idea of why we're not seeing a lot of river warfare in Ukraine. And with that, we are on to the last question of this question segment, and then we're going to be moving back into our location unknowns and the frontline news.
And this one goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, do you think that Ukraine intends on taking the ground to Russia without Western arms?
Can you reread that one again?
It said, let's scroll back up there. It says, do you think that Ukraine intends on taking the ground to Russia without Western arms?
If they do push into Russia, they are going to be taking it without Western arms. I think that they would probably intend to take it with Western arms if they could, but they have made agreements with the West, and the West would also cut off further support to them if they were to push into Russia with Western equipment. They will be pushing in with their own equipment, their Soviet-era equipment, if they were to, but I actually would kind of dissuade the Ukrainians from doing that, because it would be taking ground that necessarily doesn't need to be taken for the war to end. And also, it may be threatening the Russian sovereignty. An argument could be made for that there, and then that could lead to a nuclear exchange with the Russians. Well, specifically, the Russians could nuke Ukraine because of that, and then they have a somewhat better argument to make then than they do now if they did want to nuke Ukraine. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, but we're probably not going to see them invade, and if they did, it would be with their own weaponry, not Western weaponry. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and we're now going to be moving on into the location unknowns. And starting off with our first clip, we can see the Ukrainians firing at the Russians with a Rapira. This is the first time we've ever seen anything like this before. The Rapira is not your normal artillery piece. It is a 100mm anti-tank gun. So let me show y'all this thing. Here it is. This is almost what you would see in the Second World War being used against an infantry formation, is a gun like this. It's a lot beefier than a gun you would find in the Second World War, though. The 100mm gun on this thing is a little chunky, kind of similar to what a T-55 or a T-54 would use, or maybe even a later war, and I'm trying to think of a tank in the First World War that would have used something around 100mm. Probably an Su-100. That would be the kind of firepower this thing is bringing to the field, but check it out as the Ukrainians fire this thing directly into a formation of Russians and teach them why sometimes older weapons still do the job. We can see the Russians running into a tree line. We can see the Ukrainians watching them on the drone and calling in on the Discord to the boys that there is a little target for them to hit. We can now see them uncovering the Rapira and getting it ready to fire. We now see them loading the Rapira with a 100mm shell, the breech closing. They're now doing some slight adjustments, and now they're firing. And we can see the first round land a little bit off the mark, but the Russians are speeding up their pace. They're beginning to move a little bit quicker. We now see them hitting right into the tree line. And now we can see that the Rapira is getting incredibly accurate, and the Russians are now trying to move away from where the fire is being brought in. But it appears that they're not doing that well enough, and the Rapira crew has now gotten God mode and aimbot hacks, as they are now hitting directly to where the Russians are hiding. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but of course, absolutely nice to see the MT-12 Rapira being used the way it would have been. The way the Soviets intended against infantry formations. Moving on from...
The way Baba Yaga intended it, bliat. The way Baba Yaga used to make it, bliat.
Dude, man, Father Frost is going to be giving all those Russians a visit tonight. He's going to be going, ooh, rigor mortis be upon ye. Ooh, but anyways.
Man, Father Frost children be like, call me daddy.
I like it when you call me Big Pop. But also, yeah. I forgot to say this. This isn't the way the Rapira was intended to be used against infantry. It's actually an anti-tank gun. But you can also use these things as anti-infantry weapons. You know, it's a frontline gun. It could be used really for anything. But moving on from that, and moving on to our next clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian FPV drone hitting a bunker. Check it out. Well, you see the FPV drone coming into the bunker, getting lined up just right.
Oh man, this is the Omega company. Where's the Alpha company at?
Man, where's the
They got
beta
a chat
company
music
at?
playing though. Sigma.
Man, we need that Giga Chat. We need that Giga Chat company up here. But anyways, you see them hitting the bunker very accurately, and of course, wonderful to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we're about to see something very nice. You see, the Ukrainians that just hit that bunker, they're very happy about it. And so when you wipe out the entire squad and you don't even get mud on your shoes, this is what the Ukrainians do. Man, he getting jiggy with it. Look at him. Man, when you sit there and you get that raise and you also wipe out an entire Russian tank company in one day, this is what you do. Oh, get it!
Pretty energetic to be fighting a war.
Man, dude, whenever I go into my room, and hang on, let me do this real quick, man. This is what happens when I go into my room. Oh, shit! A rat! Then you start trying to kick the rat. Man, this guy's got the bucket hat on and everything. He's bussing. And now we see the next guy coming up again. He's about to hit it again. He's going to town.
Oh, wow. He's doing the one-handed thing, too.
And that's the end of the clip. But impressive, nonetheless.
Man, he got down.
And I gotta tell you, man, that's exactly how I do whenever there's a rat or a roach in my room, man. I do this kind of stuff right here. The rats get bamboozled. They don't know what's going on. And I also get the rat with the heel of the boots. Oh, hey, I'd love to see it. But moving on from that and on into the next clip. This one is truly the craziest one I've ever seen. These are Ukrainian soldiers walking back through a field. And watch what happens, man. You watch this, like, right here. Don't even look at the chat right now. Watch this. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. A Russian shell, a Russian tank shell, a high explosive shell, just whizzed right by that soldier. Literally missed him by inches and blew up in the tree line in front of him. Just look at that. Good lord.
That probably scorched that guy, like going by his head like that.
Dude, and then he starts kind of like speed walking a little bit. He's like, oh crap. He's like, oh no. But great to see that they did end up missing, and the Ukrainian soldiers were able to get out of there. That is probably the luckiest guy on earth right now, because that was literally just inches from getting him. But absolutely incredible to see, and hopefully that Ukrainian soldier can continue to have that kind of luck. Moving on to the Russian casualty report, we also got to see some interesting stuff here. 2 Bobcat skid steers were destroyed.
Hey, let's go.
Wonderful to see. 490 Russian soldiers were knocked out, 16 armored personnel carriers, 40 supply trucks, 10 tanks, 22 artillery pieces, 5 UAVs, 3 MLRSs, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare piece. Of course, great losses. Moving on from the casualty report and on into the front line of Ukraine, we've also been seeing some interesting stuff all throughout. Starting off in the northeast, we got to see a drone hitting a Russian tank. Check it out. This was filmed by the 92nd Brigade. Classical music was cued. There's the BMP-3. That's exactly what they're going for. We can see the drone coming on down. And we can see it. Oh! Oh no! Oh heavens!
Is that a man sitting on the back of that BMP?
You see, that's what I'm talking about, Matthew. Because I was kind of right. Y'all were also right as well. I forgot who said this. There are seats inside of the BMP for the infantry. But in practice, you can see everyone doesn't use the seats. They ride in the back little like pickup truck area over the engine. And so they're completely exposed to all artillery fire, rifle fire, and they're also exposed to the occasional drone that comes flying down amongst them and makes it look like some kind of a meat packing plant. But when you see that it's about to go in there and hit all of the orcs, when you see them all being marked.
OPK.
Ooh! DJ Khaled! We the best! But we can see, oh my god, that is, oh my lord.
Oh, damn, that's nightmare fuel right there.
Dude, look, it's Prigozhin. He's back.
Hey, what do you know?
Что Gerasimov! Это non припасна! Or это non aeroflot, блядь! But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. Great to see BMP-3 getting destroyed. We're now going to be moving on down into the area of Svatove, where we also got to see an FPV drone just watching some Russians. They just like to look at them every once in a while. And in this clip, got a really good look at them. Man.
Oh, man, that came out the other end.
Man, they were burning out both ends right there. Goodness.
They were burning that candle at both ends, I guess you could say.
Man, man.
That's a scented candle. Not a
Man,
good smell.
that's that Yankee candle. but
That's that orc candle.
man, you know, if Yankee Candle made a Russian soldier scented candle, it was smelling like garbage, tushonka, and also some stuff. I'm not even going to say it on stream, but with that, I see that clip. Very nice. And it's interesting to watch the Ukrainians just observing the normal Russian outpost doing its normal thing, which is spontaneously combusting. Yeah,
oh, damn. What the hell was that?
That was a sneeze. But moving on from the northeastern area and on into the direction of Bakhmut, we also got to hear some interesting stuff from the battlefield of Bakhmut today. And we're going to be moving on into this area. And over the past 24 hours, you wouldn't believe it, there has been a lot of frontline advances, but the Ukrainians, they have been busy. They bombed out the ammo and fuel depot at Solidar. Check it out. There it is. And there he goes. Oh, блядь, сука, блядь, пиздеки ты нахуй, блядь. And then some idiot says, so childish for those noises, it's a sneeze.
Get out of here,
what
then.
An idiot. Nuke him. It didn't nuke him. But anyways, moving on from that and into the area of Bakhmut, we also got to see some drone drops. You know, drones drop like pigeons, but the drones droppings are a lot more dangerous than the pigeon droppings.
Man, I love that, like, cozy, romantical fireplace noise they put in the background.
Oh,
yeah, son, let's get it. That's a hell of a change.
Dude, literally right when you got done saying that, it goes to heavy metal. Oh, man. But we see them hitting
psych me out.
But you see them hitting a outpost and catching it on fire. Man, quick, Matthew. Corn. Dude, man, Corn sounds like that woman on that Great Press news clip that fell over and went,
Hey, the one that mashed the grapes and fell with the spikes or something?
Yeah, the one that apparently was hated by our news network or something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, we can see them dropping
Look
the
at
next
spinny
bomb.
thing.
Man, look at that. They're doing so damn well. Yeah, you're right, Tom. That's one thing that gets me. I can't even sneeze on this channel. You can't even just have an accident without someone go, I can't stand it. You know, it's like, damn, like, what am I supposed to do?
I'm gonna sneeze through the screen on you.
Yeah. Gee, man, like like those hair cutters, Matthew. Like, what were you supposed to do? Go in there and give them COVID? Oh, I shouldn't have even said that on stream. Because that's the word that YouTube don't like. But anyways, you see them dropping another bomblet and it blowing up inside the bunker. Call these rabbit holes because, well, there's nothing actually similar with rabbit holes on these things. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that clip. Great to see the 77th doing that thing. And moving on down to the southern front, we got a very interesting 11-minute long video of straight up combat footage from the 3rd Assault Brigade. Here it is. It's morning in Ukraine. And the firefights are already beginning.
Крылью, работаю с Форда! Работаю с Форда!
Man, they giving it to him. Doing a little bit of that advancing fire.
They really have no cover. It's kind of crazy.
Man, but they are hardcore in the 3rd Brigade, man. They just walk forward, cussing them out, and blasting them at the same time. And then he just casually fires a grenade at them here and there, just to keep them on their toes. Was that music?
I hear the music.
A round just exploded nearby.
Цілий! Мольфар!
I can't tell if that's really music or if that's just ambience. It sounds a lot like music, though.
Плюс рух, крийте!
We see Russian artillery fire landing all around him.
Жив, жив!
We see a tracer fly right over him, and they're continuing to advance even under Russian artillery fire.
Бліндаж, підар, бліндажу!
We see another explosion happening. We're not sure if that's artillery. It may have been a grenade. We see him throwing a grenade. Grenade then explodes.
Are the Russians really that close?
Yeah, they are that close.
Huh.
They're practically firing right across the tree line from each other. We can see a RPG explode right in front of the soldier.
Який оцей хуйня? Отам підар! Ром!
We now see the Ukrainian soldiers continuing to advance and clearing out Russian bunkers as they go.
200, сука! Підар 200! Крия пустий!
You see them hitting another Russian position. That appears to have been Ukrainian artillery or an RPG. Artillery is being fired from both sides into this tree line as the Ukrainians continue to advance. You can see a grenade exploding right up there to the front right, and a second one exploding right in front of this Ukrainian soldier. You see him tossing the grenade. That one landed a little short right into the bunker, and then it explodes, hopefully taking out the Russians inside.
Давай, давай.
Вилазь, сука!
I didn't see nothing.
Man, I didn't see nothing either. I don't even know what you're talking about. But we can see them firing a grenade again, moving forward towards the Russian bunker. We can actually see that this guy in front of the cameraman actually has an AK-12 with an EO-TAC on top of it, showing that he captured the AK-12 from a Russian and is now using it against him.
Плюс!
Ukrainians are now clearing out the bunker continuously, attempting to make sure that it's cleared.
300, підар живий! Треба, блядь,
And now you see the Ukrainians have made it to the next trench line, and they're preparing for the next push. I said push, but it's the next push.
Гранатами закидаємо, давай гранатами закидаємо.
давай.
We now see that the battle has progressed so far that it is now clear day. No longer dawn, the break of dawn, like they were fighting
Wi-Fi,
in.
крий мене, я зараз вперед продвинуся. Ром,
The Ukrainian now lays prone and begins to fire down the length of the tree line, trying to suppress the Russian forces at the end. He now fires a grenade launcher to hopefully take a couple of them out. The grenade sounds to have exploded about maybe 200 yards away, or 150 yards away. We hear him firing a second grenade. We can see something explode behind him, throwing up Russian garbage all over the place, and little fragments of fabric, probably from the coverings of the outpost.
I just like the war footage that, you know, really gives you a sense of how nasty war actually is, like this one right here.
Oh yeah, it's horrendous stuff. And the artillery going off everywhere, you know, just concussing you as you go. That grenade actually just blew up inside of a tree branch. But we now see the Ukrainian soldier now in the same spot, and we can't hear that that's music, but I think it's so quiet we probably won't get copyrighted for it. You now see the Ukrainian soldier walking back. Now he's running back.
Да. Та мене там, блядь, немає такого ямки, блядь, нікуди впасти, блядь.
Бліндаж підерський оцей.
We hear an artillery round whiz right over your head and explode nearby.
Єбать, мене, блядь, броніком підарським присипало, блядь. Тебе теж? Я, блядь, думав, що то наше, блядь. Єбать, нон-стопчик.
That guy just gave a damn plug for a product. Dude, he whipped out a non-stop energy drink, and he said, I'm drinking non-stop. Look.
Єбать, нон-стопчик.
Yes.
Get down.
Man, I love to know that he appreciates his sponsors. The firefight then begins, though. He does get to drink his non-stop.
Підари, перебігають! Підари,
They now begin to lay down fire again at the Russians.
От на цьому, на бугору. На 12. А, давай. Плюс. Ще вперед двигатися треба. А?
Тебе задача. Збирати гранати і сміститися туди нагору, поняв?
Плюс. Скар! Я йду до тебе!
You now see them moving around the shattered tree line again to a small crater where another Ukrainian soldier is.
Давай, пошел.
I mean, you can see that it appears that their advance is considerably slowing now that the daylight has broken. We hear a drone somewhere out there. We can see it, actually.
That's Russian, apparently.
That is where we got that video from, actually, Matthew. Remember, we've seen this little isolated clip of them shooting down that drone? And there it goes, and the Ukrainians got the drone. We see an artillery round blowing up right behind the Ukrainian soldier.
О! Що в щоку? Щось є?
Да, хуйня. Балаклава, стой! Балаклаву и зажми. Всё.
We now see them firing once more. Now hear another artillery round exploding nearby,
Wi-Fi!
directly to his left. Smoke clouds now enveloping him.
I would say that guy's probably compromised since that drone saw his location.
But, you know, they have to continue pushing on. Artillery is dialed into their position, though, now. It's starting to rain down nearby.
Як ти?
We see him firing his tactical AK here.
Підар, сука, блядь!
We hear some machine gun rounds fire right overhead.
передо мною! Далеко! По ту сторону! Джасе, ти справа!
And we hear another drone flying over. We see it up there. There's that tiny little bit of pixels right there. You see the soldier trying to take some shots at the drone, but sadly, no dice on that one. He missed. We see it coming right over again, and it appears from the speed of it, it might be an FPV drone. And then we can hear the Glory to a Stotska anthem from Papers, Please playing here at the end, which we will have to mute. And then the video ends, but showing a prolonged amount of footage of what the 3rd Brigade has been going through in the area as they continue the battle in the southern flank of Bakhmut. Moving on from that clip and into the next one, we also got to see that the Ukrainians were able to destroy a rare Russian T-90M today as well, which was pretty sick. I'm going to be muting that, but we can see the T-90M making its way down the road right there, making a right turn, and then driving towards the next village. We can now see it posting up in the tree line in between there and the next village and firing on Ukrainian positions. We now see the FPV drone coming on in and hitting to the rear of the T-90 somewhere around the engine bay. We now see a live reaction of the Ukrainian soldiers that are operating the drone, and it appears that they are somewhat excited.
Kind of like a Call of Duty, like a reaction stream or something.
Yeah. And now we can see the FPV drone hitting him again, and this time a lot more seriously than the last, blowing up some pieces of the T-90 and putting up a big smoke cloud. We now see the T-90s rolling off the field. Now we can see some kind of a charred wreckage right there. FPV drone coming down onto it right here in a second. And there we go. There's the 3rd one that's hit the T-90. And now we can see that that T-90 had a small fire on it, and it appears to have been disabled as the hatches were open and there was no crew around. Moving on from that clip, great to see that another T-90M was destroyed. We're going to be moving on into the back area near Semihira and Kodima, where we saw that 2 BM-21 grads were knocked out today in 2 separate areas. Both of them were knocked out by HIMARS missiles. There's the first one being knocked out. We're going to skip forward a little bit to show y'all the Russian crew bailing out of the grad and leaving. I don't even know how they made it out of the grad, but nevertheless they did. We can see that the grad is, of course, completely destroyed as well. And then moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see another grad at Kodima being destroyed as well. We're assuming that these are both in the same battery, and we're also targeted by the same HIMARS. Here comes the shell. Any second now, you see a couple of Russians hanging out like King of the Hill down here, having a couple of drinks, talking with the boys. And then we're about to see the little grad get hit here in a second by the HIMARS M30 unitary warhead. Look at it. Here it comes. There goes the crew. They're actually going back to their grad to get back in it. And there's the HIMARS rocket. There goes the grad. The grad starts firing off its missiles, and the crew is done for. Absolutely beautiful. Moving on from that clip and into our next one in the Bakhmut area, we also got to see a Ural truck get hit at Dacha as well. This one got hit by a cluster bomb, which is a little bit more pizzazz-like than the HIMARS rockets. Here it comes. Any second now. Be patient. There's the cluster munition, hitting the truck. You see them highlighting that with their mouse cursor. And now we can see that the windshield's been busted out. It appears that this truck was in the middle of Detroit for a good weekend. We can now see it getting hit again, and a little bit of smoke coming off of it. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And of course, nice to see another Ural being knocked out. Moving on from that and into the next clip near Ozrenivka, we can also see that the Ukrainians were able to get some more Russian prisoners. You see one of the Russian prisoners right here. And we see that he seems to be a little dazed, just kind of laying around. But we see them processing him, and of course, great to see they were able to take some additional prisoners in that area. Moving past the Donetsk region, we're now going to be moving on down into the area of Velika Novosilka, where we got to see some pictures of an M777 in action with the 148th Artillery Brigade in this area. Of course, the M777 has been in service with the Ukrainians for nearly a year at this point, but still, great to see them operating these wonderful artillery pieces and hopefully to great effect against Russian positions. And we did see that apparently they were able to do just that, as a Russian artillery system was destroyed behind the lines today with an FPV drone. We're going to be muting the song Cops, because that is copyrighted. And now we can see it going up in flames. A small nuclear explosion, one for the books. With that, that's the end of that clip right there. But we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, into the area of Robotyne. A decent amount did happen in Robotyne today. While I'm being told that we're running overtime, which that's why I'm also kind of moving through the clips quickly, over the past 24 hours, we have been seeing some pretty decent advances in this area, and it appears that the Ukrainian forces are finally coming directly onto the village of Novoprokopivka itself. They have been maneuvering around the Surovikin line and through it in this area, but now it appears that they're also going to be putting direct pressure onto the village as well. Starting off with our first clip, we got to see a driver's view of what it looks like inside of a Leopard 2. And we're going to be muting that because that's heavily copyrighted. And we see him showing us the periscope that the Leopard 2's driver looks through, and showing us another Leopard 2 in front of his. We can now see his Leopard 2 firing. We now see this Leopard 2 slewing its gun, getting ready to fire off its next round. And it's about to be doing that right here. And there goes the next round. We see the Leopard 2 in front firing. It appears that one of the rounds has just hit the tree line right in front of him, but that's the end of the clip, and very interesting to see a group of Leopard 2s in action. Moving on from that, we also got to see that, according to the Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine did take ground, the exact amount represented on Deep State UA. Moving on from that, we also got to see some Russians being sent home back to the fiery depths of hell where they come from. And so here's the clip. We see the Russians moving around, and we can see the artillery slamming directly onto their squad, knocking them on out. We now see a Russian coming out of the tree line going, and then he got hit. So there we have it. Very nice to see. Pretty impressive stuff overall, and great to see the barrage taking great effect. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see more Russians being captured in this area as well. And we can see two of them sitting there on the ground as they are getting ready to process them and send them back to a prisoner of war position. Wonderful to see. Moving on from that clip and on out of the area, of course the Ukrainians are continuing to advance in multiple areas, but it's now time for our speech. So here it is. And let me put that in Ukrainian. Here we go.
Дорогі українці, українки, наприкінці цього тижня важливо сказати кілька речей. Перше – це фронт. За минулі 7 днів маємо просування вперед на таврійських напрямках. Є рух на Бахмутському напрямку, є рух Куп'янський, Лиманський напрямки, Авдіївка, Мар'їнка. Ми там тримаємо позиції. Я дякую всім воїнам, які це забезпечують. Кожного тижня незмінно ініціатива в руках наших воїнів за Україною. Саме український героїзм визначає, як ця війна завершиться. Маємо усі про це пам'ятати. Друге, я хочу подякувати всім нашим людям, які протягом тижня допомагали долати наслідки російських обстрілів і рятували людей. Суми, Дніпропетровська область, Донеччина, міста Одеської області. Дякую вам. Костянтинівка, Донецької області, парамедик Руслан Губанов, лейтенант поліції. Після удару російських терористів рятував поранених, діставав людей з-під завалів. Загалом за час служби врятував вже 82 людини. Дякую, Руслане. Лейтенант поліції Олег Сізов теж працює парамедиком, врятував 153 людини за час служби. Просто уявіть, скільки життів завдячують одній людині. Дякую вам, Олеже. Капітан поліції Олена Василенко виїжджає на місця ударів, документує наслідки обстрілів, допомагає пораненим. Сама потрапила під обстріл артилерії, була поранена, повернулася на службу. Дякую вам, Олено. І дякую хлопцям, українським рятувальникам, які першими прибули на місце після удару росіян по Костянтинівці, по ринку, пожежний рятувальник Роман Дичко, головний майстер-сержант Денис Суханов, капітан служби цивільного захисту Сергій Чікін. Жорстокий обстріл Кривого Рогу. Одна людина загинула, мої співчуття рідним, 60 поранених. Я дякую кожному і кожній, хто допомагав рятувати людей. А особливо я відзначу Вадима Кучкурду, Євгенія Губу та Владислава Курасова, працівників наших ДСНС. Хлопці врятували з-під завалів 3 людей. Дякую вам. Відзначу також поліцейських Богдана Коваленка, Валерія Великого. Вони одним із перших прибули на місце удару та почали діставати людей з-під завалів. Суми. Старший лейтенант поліції Ярослав Куць прибув на місце російського обстрілу та швидко загасив вогонь у безпосередній близькості до людей, заблокованих під уламками. Я дякую вам за цю швидкість, Ярославе. Ще відзначу працівників ДСНС Сумської області, сержанти служби цивільного захисту Павло Жук, Ігор Токаренко, полковник служби цивільного захисту Сергій Галат. Дякую вам, хлопці, за те, що рятуєте життя наших людей. Одеська область, місто Ілія. Андрій Носов, Андрій Мосієнко, Андрій Василенко, наші пожежники. Я дякую вам, хлопці. Місто Рені. Відзначу поліцейського майора Дениса Бондаренка. Після російської атаки шахедної він врятував 4 людей, надав їм медичну допомогу і доставив в лікарню. Я дякую тобі, Денисе. І також дякую кожному українському лікарю, кожній медичній сестричці, кожному медбрату, усім українським бойовим медикам, які рятують життя наших людей, повертають українцям сили. Це дійсно велика робота, велика. Ще одне. Сьогодні поблизу міста Часів Яр на Донеччині російські терористи ударили по машині волонтерів. Пряме влучання з ПТРК. Станом на цей час точно відомо, що загинув канадієць Ентоні Ігнат. На жаль, ймовірно, теж загинула іспанка Ема Ігуаль. Мої співчуття рідним. Ще 2 волонтерів доставлені в лікарні Дніпра. Це громадянин Німеччини Мавік Рубен та громадянин Швеції Йохан Матіас. Їм надається необхідна допомога. Цей російський обстріл знов-таки підтверджує, наскільки близькою є війна проти України для усіх в світі, хто дійсно цінує людське життя і хто вважає спільним моральним обов'язком людства зупинити терор і перемогти зло. Слава усім нашим воїнам, слава усьому нашому народу. Я дякую кожному в світі, хто допомагає Україні вистояти, захистити життя. Обов'язково ми переможемо. Слава Україні!
And
Hiram Slava. Hiram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 564 of the war. And of course, that is the end of the halftime show as well. We're about to be going on into the second part of this stream, and we got some power plays made by members of the Lee Spring Army to help out this fundraiser. As far as I understand, we are only 120, well, actually less than that, like $110 away from $7,000 raised on this fundraiser tonight. And before we even go and call off all the folks who've made this possible tonight, I got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for helping out this channel to continue to reach fundraiser goals and to continue to save the lives of people over in Ukraine. I don't know if desensitization is a thing. I feel like it may be, because over the war, you know, and I'll be, you know, I like to try and be as completely honest. We always like to be optimists, but also be honest at the same time. Donations to fundraisers have gradually been decreasing as a norm throughout the war. Our usual fundraisers at the start of the war used to be able to average around $17,000 to $20,000 per fundraiser to support nonprofits in Ukraine. Nowadays, our average is somewhere anywhere in between $7,000 to $9,000 raised on any given weekend. It's about cut in half from what it used to be at the very beginning of the war. But while it is not as large as it has been, I think it's still a massive testament that it's even $9,000 to $7,000 in support for the fundraisers that have been going on at this point.
Hey, Alex Yurchenko just put in a 20, got us up to 120, and got us up to 7,000.
Hey, let's get it. Let's go. And of course, that is absolutely amazing to see that we were able to make it to $7,000. But I think it's absolutely a testament that we are able to make it to $7,000 and $9,000, even at this point in the war. One thing we always have to remember, it's been 75 weekends of these fundraisers. At least. I haven't even been able to keep an exact count of them. But I have to say, it's absolutely amazing to know that we've been able to raise $7,000 to $9,000 every single weekend on average at this point throughout the war. And I got to thank everyone for keeping with us and also helping to fundraise through this channel. It's a massive thing to me, and it's a big thing to me to know that we are helping out in Ukraine. I always talk about the strategic aspects of the war and why it's important for America to support Ukraine on more so of a, not really a mental, but more so of a overall big picture kind of aspect. But one thing that I always think is also very important, although we don't really put this out there much, is just the humanitarian side of things, because there are people over there that are just like y'all and just like me who are fighting in this war right now and risking everything, and many people do end up losing their lives at the end of each day to defend their nation and to stop the Russians from pushing even further. And I think it's wonderful to know that so many people still have a care to support them through nonprofits and through fundraisers, and to also do it here, and more so here than anywhere else. We have been slandered, we've been dragged through the mud, people have lied about these fundraisers, and that also has actually had an impact on them to a small point as well. And something that still aggravates me and pisses me off to this day is that someone would try and lie about how we run these fundraisers to end up impacting people's lives in a foreign country that could count on this support to have a bite to eat or to even save their lives in a life-saving operation. It's something that annoys me greatly, because it's not just something that we've noticed on the fundraiser side of things. We've noticed that to a small degree on everything on this channel. And we don't really like to talk about that much live, and I know y'all don't really like to hear about that much either, but this is the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. Is being able to talk about this war and being able to help save the lives of people over there through what we do. And so it means a lot to me. And it pisses me off just to no end, an unbelievable degree, that someone would say and do things that would end up hurting and damaging not just this channel, but the way we are able to help out people who are actually over there. And believe it or not, this guy who said this crap, he's going to be going on another vanity trip over there to make himself look good in his own head. He was actually packing for that last night. And to that asshole, I would like to ask him, where is your 1099, since you've apparently stopped talking about us entirely since we've started to say that? Where is your 1099? And also, why in the world do you think it's good to go spend $6,000 on another vacation when you could put that into an actual fundraiser that helps to feed or save people through life-saving surgeries? Answer that question for me. But moving on from that, sorry to put that out there, but it pisses me off to no end, and I usually try and keep that under wraps, but I really, this guy just pisses me off to no end, and the stupidity of it is that he just went through, and instead of covering the news last night, he covers himself packing his bags to go on a vacation on his own viewers' cash, instead of actually helping out in a meaningful way, like feeding folks or helping them out with life-saving operations. So with that, we are going to be moving on into our polls, but before we do that, we're also going to be calling out the top donors in between the last moment and this one. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our top donors since the last time, we have a 200 from YB Watchin'. That is the biggest one since the last time we called them off, and a big thanks to you, YB, for that very generous donation to the fundraiser. We also have a 120 from Alex Yurchenko, as well as a 50 from Miranda Nelson, Andrew Polonsky, Marion Deemer, and Ed Allen. And thank you all very much for all the donations. We have hit $7,000. I was wondering if we were going to hit the 5,000, and sure enough, we went well above that to 7,000. So, big thanks to you all once again. And Enforcer, are you ready for a poll?
And I sure am, so let's hit it.
All right, and our first poll, and we love the polls. Oh, man, I'm telling you. It says, can U.S. generals decide to disobey orders if they subjectively decide that they are unlawful? And we're going to keep the conversation civil, because I see that this was somewhat of a contentious topic earlier. Everybody has a fair argument, I'll say that. 38% said yes, they can and should do that. I was a typo in that poll. 37% said only in very extreme circumstances. 17% said no, they cannot and shouldn't do that. And 7% said unsure. And for me on this one, I don't think there should be any subjective determinations made in the moment by any general that an order given is unlawful. That is something to be decided after the fact. And sadly, that is just the way it works. I know some folks are going to say, you don't know anything about the military. But one thing I do know is that if you disobey an order, that is a court-martial offense. You can debate after the fact whether or not it was lawful or not, but that's something to the JAGs, that's something to the lawyers, and the generals are not lawyers. They don't know everything going on, and even though they have common sense most of the time, they can't make that determination in the moment. That would be wrong in my opinion, and no matter who's giving the order, whichever president it is, it should be carried out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I think, can you reread the poll prompt again?
It says, can U.S. generals decide to disobey orders if they subjectively decide they are unlawful?
No, they can't. A lot of people misunderstand that. You can't do that. In real practice, you can't. And some people say, well, what if they think the president is mentally unfit? Oh, well, that's a great scapegoat. Then you could just say that whenever you don't want to follow an order that you personally disagree with. That would not be a smart move. Because I've seen, and I'm going to just, and we're talking about this in a apolitical way, because I know some people out there have very two-dimensional mindsets. So if they hear something that is critical of their side, even when I'm being critical of both, they get offended. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but this is the world we live in, and it's a fair assessment of both. There have been arguments made about the current sitting president and the former sitting president that they are not mentally competent to hold the office. And if that is the measurement that we're going to be giving generals to disregard orders, that means that generals will be able to disregard orders regardless of who is in charge, or even if they are or are not mentally fit. You can't put some kind of a very vague arbiter of judgment like that out there, because that's going to be abused every single time. That is going to be something that will never rectify itself once it begins, and then the military will be able to operate on its own and not even follow the orders of the president whatsoever, because every time a new president's elected, they're just going to immediately go, well, he's not mentally fit, and then they're not going to follow his orders. And also people are going to say, well, what if an order is legal or illegal? Largely, the honest truth is you will have to follow the order even if it is an illegal one. That's also why later on there are usually scandals where there are hearings in front of Congress, congressional hearings, talking about why illegal orders were given, and then they punish the people who were responsible for issuing the illegal orders and some of the people who carried them out. So, I hate to put it out there like that because everyone likes to think it's a perfect world, but if you allow people to just disagree with any orders they want to disagree with, you're going to start losing control of things very quickly. So you have to keep it a very rigid structure, and orders must be followed regardless. And also, if a president is unfit, like Dion Yurchenko said, this is a very good point. If a president is unfit, it's not the role of a general to make that decision. He's not an elected member of the government. It's up to Congress to make that decision. And if it is such a serious issue, then the president needs to be impeached due to mental unfitness. And if that is the case, that should be such a unanimous argument to be made in Congress. He should actually be impeached. It would be possible. But in any instance, it is not the role of an unelected general who was appointed by the president, approved by the Congress, to be making decisions that affect the citizenry of the nation, and to also disregard the orders of the president. That is a national security issue, and that is something that we can't worry about when it comes down to a serious problem. So with that, I hope that does address that poll, in my opinion, fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll here, while I flip over to it, it says, Russia promotes a general that says Ukraine is just a stepping stone to invade Europe, and what are your thoughts? 46% said it's just tough talk and nothing more. 39% said Russia wants to move on NATO. 12% said, it's concerning, but status quo. And 2% said unsure. And personally, for me, I don't think they promoted the guy because he said that. They really don't have many options in Russia to promote people to generals and higher positions. So I think it's just a coincidence the guy said that. Obviously, Russia has expressed in the past that they would like to move on to NATO countries, but I think that's pretty much tough talk because for them to actually move on to a NATO country, that would be almost, I can't say the word, but that would not be good for them. But Enforcer, what say you?
What happened? Reread the line.
Russia promotes general that says Ukraine is just a stepping stone to invade Europe. Thoughts?
That's largely par for the course at this point, exactly what Putin has been saying for a while. So I would say that's kind of what you would expect, what I would expect at this point. So with that, I hope that does address that poll. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for now. So we're moving on to our live chat questions. But first up, shout out to Dwayne Porter for putting in a 100 to the fundraiser and getting us up to $7.2 thousand. Big thanks to Dwayne for that. And moving on to our questions, we have one from Marcia Tucker, who says, any news about the Freedom of Russia Legion or the RVC and what they're up to lately? And thanks.
To be honest with you, we haven't been hearing a lot of news or information about either unit. They've kind of fallen into obscurity. I don't know if that's for certain reasons, but we haven't really been getting a lot of news or information about them at all. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, there have been reports of increased military activity at the ZNPP, and do you have any further details?
We have not had any details at all about really anything going on at the ZMPP. From what we understand, things are going on as usual there for the moment, and there isn't really anything worth of note, at least from what we understand. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And what I've seen on the ZNPP is the military activity has increased around there, but of course the IAEA is being very secretive about what's actually going on because they're very scared most of the time to say what's actually happening. You can sort of make your own determination as to why that is, but something is causing an increase in activity, but nobody's really sure. And also they are thinking there's some more mines on top of the reactors again, but I'm not sure if they ever really left. But, you know, that's what I've heard. But anyways, moving on to our next live chat, we have one from Margaret Hemsley, who says, how good are drones covering the air defense whilst waiting for planes?
The air defense is doing somewhat well. From what we understand, it's doing pretty good for most things considered. But aircraft will certainly be helping out to fill in the gaps that air defense can't do in defending the skies of Ukraine. For example, intercepting them outside of the range of the surface-to-air missile system, considering that it just is sitting there and it can't really move around. The aircraft can move through the air and engage the targets wherever they may be as long as they've been picked up on radar. So that's what aircraft will be adding. But beyond that, the air defense, the ground air defense, has been doing somewhat well. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, really quickly, I see some people still disagreeing with what we're saying. Well, what I said is my opinion. And apparently, of course, people can't take an opinion for an opinion and agree to disagree. But let me go through this really quickly with y'all in another context. Because this is the context we used to use back in the day when I said orders have to be followed regardless whether you like them or not, or whether you think they're legal or not, or whether you think your president is mentally competent or not. At the beginning of the war in 2022, the whole reason why Ukraine lost the city of Kherson in the south and also almost had Mykolaiv jeopardized as well is because two Ukrainian generals decided that they knew better than the president of Ukraine, who's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. They knew better than the citizenry who elected the government and also the Rada. They knew better than everyone. And they decided that it would be smart to just clear out the minefields in Crimea, have their soldiers ordered to go through and just dig up the mines and clear the way for the Russian army to invade. Now, when we put it that way, you know, they weren't doing anything illegal, really. They were just using their roles as generals and their authority to tell the soldiers below them what to do. There was nothing clearly illegal about what they did until the Russians invaded, and then it became treason. But up until that point, nothing they had done was against the law. And so then it becomes the question, should a general be able to do something like that directly against the interests of the public? And the answer should be no. And that's why I say that generals should follow orders regardless. If you give people the authority to do whatever the hell they want in direct disagreement with what an elected representative said, you're going to be in a bit of trouble. And that's something that I think needs to be guarded against. And that's why I say that. Some of y'all are bringing up specific instances like, oh, should the U.S. military be used against the citizens of the United States? Well, technically, they can't even be used against the citizenry of the United States. That's more of a National Guard issue, and then that relies on state-by-state basis. The Army can't be used in that role, so it's not even an order that can be given. You could try and give the order, but it's not even illegal. It's just an order that can't be issued due to constitutional confinements. So, you know, that's a bit of a different basis. That's more of a National Guard issue. And then you rely either on, I believe it would be the mayor of Washington, D.C., because they have their own guard, or it will be the governor of a state. So there you have it. You know, I'm not going to talk about the other situations. On the by and large, orders must be followed. Like when Condor 1970 said, "You mean when Milley illegally contacted the Chinese?" Yes. Or when Milley didn't tell anyone about the balloons flying over the United States. That's also another example. And that's also under another presidency and another administration. Two different situations under two different administrations, completely devoid of any kind of political background to it. It is an administrative issue because the executive branch and the confines of the Constitution lay out exactly what the role of the president is. The role of the president is to be the commander-in-chief, and all that the military serves as is an extension of the executive branch. And of course, it's funded by Congress and all that crap, but beyond that, its job is to be of service to the president and for the president to command the military. That's his role as an elected representative. And so the fact that one president was just completely unaware of a certain situation and the military was going to keep that from him until it became a massive outrage in the public, and then they said, oh, now we're going to apprise the president on this very pressing situation. And then on another situation, they went, well, I don't really agree with what the U.S. is doing overseas with the Chinese, so I'm just going to call up the Chinese and tell them not to worry about it. Those are the kind of situations I'm talking about. I'm not going to talk about other ones. That's what I'm talking about. And those are the things that are very concerning to me from an administrative aspect of the government. And so, that's what it is. I know people are going to disagree with that because everyone likes to go, oh, I would love the military to follow my political beliefs instead of just following whatever the president who has been elected by the people says. I would just rather have them follow my beliefs and just do what I want. And that just doesn't make any damn sense to me at all.
Here's what I'm saying about it. There's two sides to the argument. That some people are saying that they have a specific answer, like a right and wrong answer to the question. There is no right or wrong answer to the question, because either way you go, you could be in bad shape. Because if you go along and obey an unlawful order, you could technically be court-martialed later for carrying out the unlawful order if it's determined that it was unlawful. On the other hand, if you disobey an unlawful order, you can be court-martialed for disobeying the order in the first place. So there is no right and wrong answer here. It's on a case-by-case basis. But in general, though, you really can't just subjectively decide to disobey orders. In my opinion, I wouldn't do that if I was in the military. But, it comes down to your personal beliefs, I guess. But it could end up bad either way is the truth.
And also, I saw someone say, you're completely incorrect. You have no idea what the U.S. UCMJ states. I have a fairly good idea the UCMJ states that insubordination is a criminal offense under that code, if I'm not mistaken. So
it does.
Yeah. So I'm not really one to cherry pick, because while it may be an illegal order, not following that order does technically fall under insubordination. Now, whether it is or isn't, you have to kind of run that risk, because if you do disobey an order that you find illegal, you will be court-martialed for insubordination, and then it'll be up to that board that you're sitting in front of whether you did commit insubordination or whether the order was legal or illegal. So that's a little bit of a risk you have to take. But I don't think it's a smart idea to sit there and just say, oh, let's just forget due process of a court-martial and everything. If you just think an order is illegal, you shouldn't have to follow it, and then nothing should come of it. No. If you disobey an order, a court-martial will follow for insubordination. That was a serious act that was just committed right there. You just violated an order from a superior, regardless whether it was right or not. And then you'll have to look through the due process side of things as to whether that was serious insubordination, a mutiny, whatnot, and then figure out what kind of punishment needs to be applied, if any. So that's what we should really be thinking of it as, instead of going, oh, well, they shouldn't have to follow an illegal order, and, that's just that. I mean, how in the world is the military going to run? You sit there as a, let's just say, because this is something that actually happens, and I'll give you all a little hypothetical here. Let's just say you're a secret communist sympathizer, and you're in the U.S. Marine Corps at Okinawa, and you know that in a couple of weeks' time, there is going to be a landing force of PLA soldiers that will land at Okinawa and will attempt to take the airfield there. And you're a communist sympathizer, so you decide that your orders to hold the airfield until further support arrives, that's an unlawful order, see, because it's not actually allowing for retreat to happen and for lives to be saved. So you retreat your men off of the airfield under the guise that that would be the correct thing to do, instead of following the quote-unquote unlawful order that you think was issued to you, and the PLA takes the airfield, and then they hold a strategic advantage over the area. So then you have that situation, because the thing about it being a lawful or unlawful order, that is a very, very narrow concept. And the way a lot of people apply that is a very broad one, where it can really apply to anything. If you just kind of disagree with something on the moral level, whether it's lawful or not, then you just do whatever you want based off of that. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. Maybe y'all get what I'm saying. Maybe y'all don't. If you don't, you can agree to disagree, or you can be one of the people who go, "Oh, this is my last time here," and that's fine too.
And you know, another thing that's shocking to me, and I've seen this in the civilian world, is I've been to many court proceedings, and I've seen judges rule wrong. Even when the law says one thing, they'll rule completely different and ignore the law. Some people think that because the UCMJ says one thing and it spells out certain requirements, that means every single time you go into face a military panel of judges that they're going to rule the exact way the law says. That's not true either. Because why do you think there's appeals? Because sometimes they rule wrong, they don't follow the law, and it happens, I would imagine, quite like the civilian world, quite a bit. So, you know, nothing is set in stone. If you do something that is questionable, there's always some judge somewhere that could say they didn't like that, they didn't agree with it, and they'll throw you in jail for it. So, you know, just another consideration. It's very subjective.
So really quickly, let me go through real quick. What the hell? Wait, are they? Okay, hang on. Let me go down here to Article 2. Here we go. Because someone's just said, soldiers take oaths to a constitution, not to the president. That's a great point, you know, because they do. They actually do. But what does the Constitution say? Because, you know, that's a great statement and all, but when they swear an oath to the Constitution, it's not just to a piece of paper. It's actually to what the Constitution states. And under the Constitution, and let me go through the powers of the president. Let's see here. Let's see. The executive office shall be vested, President of the United States. Each state shall appoint electors. Electors shall meet in representative states. Let's see here. President shall be the commander. Here we go. The president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their representative office, and he shall have powers to grant reprieves for pardons for offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment. And of course, it goes through the rest of his powers, but you can see right there in the very first part of Section 2 of Article 3, it says the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. And then, of course, that further extends on to the Air Force, the Marine Corps, so on. But very clearly, under the Constitution that a soldier swears to, he is supposed to, the military is supposed to follow the orders of the president. He's not the guy who just kind of gives suggestions to the army. He's actually the guy who runs the army, the military as a whole. That's his defined role in the Constitution. So, you know, I don't know, maybe people will still disagree with me, but that's what the Constitution says. If you swear an oath to the Constitution, you're swearing an oath to follow the chain of command, and specifically that the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. There's really no negotiation to that. It doesn't say the president's the advisor to the military, and the military can do whatever the hell it wants beyond him. It says he's the commander-in-chief. So that's what it says. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and also shout out to Hal Rose for putting in a $300 donation, as well as Eagle Anderson for putting in a $50 as well. And the fundraiser amount got up to $7,500 now. So big thanks to all of you once again for that. And moving back to our live chat questions, while I'm trying to read the chat because I'm interested in what everyone's saying at this point. Moving on to our next question is from Ms. Disa, who says Russia has deployed 46 launchers of the Iskander missile system along the border with Ukraine. And how many do they have in total?
Can you reread that again really quickly? Because I just saw something here, and I'm going to time this out, and I'm going to let you review that really quickly, man, to make sure we're being fair on that one. But can you reread that one again?
All right. Ms. Disa said Russia has deployed 46 launchers of the Iskander missile system along the border with Ukraine, and how many do they have in total?
I don't exactly know how many they have total. I think they have something like 60 of them, if I had to take a ballpark guess over the last numbers I saw, but we don't know if any of those have ever been destroyed. So that's something like 70% of them, I'm thinking, but I could be wrong. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next question, we have one from Bootlegger, who says, been meaning to ask if you've ever seen pics of Boeing Wonderland from World War II.
Boeing Wonderland. Let me check, because I think I may have. It may ring a bell. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, I have. So this is actually the Boeing factory, and in World War II, they were scared that the Japanese were going to start bombing the mainland. So what they did is that they built these giant fake tarps and tents and a whole bunch of other stuff on top of the factories to make them look like a neighborhood instead of the factory, so that way they wouldn't be hit by Japanese bombers. It never really had to be used, but it was still a very bizarre thing that they did, and also really cool looking too, because it looks like a neighborhood from the sky, but there's an entire factory churning out aircraft right under it. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I did know about that. It's just that for some reason, Wonderland didn't really click for me for a second. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, I want to say one more thing. Because I saw Avari Mendebrada say, I was never in the military, nor am I involved in the legal profession. I just did a Google search, and that's what some interesting articles referenced. And one thing I will say is, obviously, I'm just, I think, about a month into law school, so I don't know much of anything yet. And also, the UCMJ and the military law is a completely different, like, set of laws than the regular people are under. So it's an entirely different world on its own. So I'm no expert on that whatsoever. But one thing I do know is you have to be a JAG or someone that's very specialized in it to know exactly what you're talking about. The average person doesn't know. And I see some folks in here saying that they're perfectly capable of making a determination of whether or not a order is legal or not legal. But the question here is, what is the judge in your case going to think about it, not what you think about it? Because you don't get to determine whether or not you go to jail for an offense. That's something that the judge, and the military, you don't have a jury, you just have a panel of judges which decide your fate, which is even worse than the civilian world, from my understanding. So, you know, I really hate to say it, the UCMJ is not something that I look favorably upon because it's so different than the civilian world. I think a lot of the civilian stuff should probably carry over into the military, but you really lose a ton of rights when it comes to your legal rights in the military. It's kind of weird, to say the least. But with that being said, Enforcer, would you like to weigh in or move on to the next question?
Really quickly, I'm trying to look around, and because everyone's talking about if it's an unlawful order this, unlawful order that, but nobody's really defining what in the world does the UCMJ outline as unlawful orders in the first place. Because, you know, right now it just sounds like an order that's unlawful, but what do they say are orders that can be disobeyed because they are deemed to be unlawful? So let's see what UCMJ Defense has to say. So I'm going to look at it off screen real quick, and then we'll bring it on screen. So, reading through this really quickly, it appears to not really cover, in the major sections, anything about disobeying actual military orders. It appears to be more so about medical rights, alcohol consumption, loans, writing checks, and other kinds of more so personal rights things, more so than actual martial things pertaining to the military. Well, actually, the carrying out of military activities. And of course, there are war crimes and everything like that, and those are probably, well, those are unlawful orders according to the Geneva Convention and so on. But it doesn't appear that the UCMJ specifically outlines those from what I'm reading right here. If you'll want to find the website, ucmjdefense.com, it doesn't really outline any of those as being unlawful orders. You can see that it pertains more so to personal rights than the carrying out of military activities. So it appears that the UCMJ doesn't even really define anything in the military sense of actually carrying out the actions of the military inside of its confines of it being an unlawful order. So with that, and correct us if we're wrong, please try and not just say we're wrong, just let us know where we can find out we're wrong and give us some citations or something so we can go look at it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And big shout out to Mr. Jimmy Jet, who put in a 231 donation and got us up to 7.8 even on the fundraiser. Big thanks to you for that as well. And we're moving on to our next question, which goes to Northern Garden Girl, who says, can you or Ad Enforcer share insights on the various stronger NATO responses short of declaring war? And I am not very war savvy, so feel free to dumb it down, and thank you both. And to me, I think Article 4 would be the first step to respond to a situation like they had in Romania. That is not declaring World War III. That is just simply having a conference. That's one response. But Enforcer, what is your response?
I would say that my response would be, if war was to begin in between NATO and Russia, they would, of course, have to look at Article 4. But Article 4 really is just a discussion of what Article 6 says. And does that attack fall under the confines of Article 6? And then if it does, they move on to Article 5, and then they figure out what Article 5 will mean. Article 5 doesn't always mean an armed response. It may just mean a response of any kind, armed or unarmed. But then if Article 4 was found out to be in effect, then they would move into discussing what their plan of action would be as far as Article 5 is concerned. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because that's what a start of a war would look like. I don't know how long that process would be. In this instance, would it be 24 hours? Would it be less than that? Would it be longer than 24 hours? Don't really know. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Matthew, I saw a comment that I think was trying to be a little petty here. And, you know, I'm always one for a challenge. Someone said, are you going to read all the statutes of the UCMJ? Wow, Enforcer. And,
well, hell yeah. You better get used to reading if you're going to law school.
You know what?
Sit down.
You know what, man? Like, if you want to be petty like that with a comment like that, I'll actually sit here tomorrow while I'm in law school, and with all my free time, I'll read every single article of the UCMJ, and then I'll come right back on here, and we'll have an entire special documentary about the UCMJ and what it says, because I'm totally fine with that, you know, because if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and if the UCMJ says different than what I'm saying, then we'll find out. If it's not, then I'm sure, you know, knowing the way that comment was worded, you'll have some kind of a snide remark about us personally at that point. But hey, I'm fine with that. You know what? Because I don't bend my will to what people say. We've had stupid crap said, and I'm not saying what you're saying is stupid. I'm just saying it's really rude. But we've had stupid crap said to us throughout the entire war. We've been told we're wrong on everything. Hell, I've been told that I was wrong in saying that East Germany was a country. It was actually a part of the Soviet Union. So, hell, I'm ready to go. I don't care. I'll go read whatever I need to, and I'll come on here, and like in almost 85% of the time, we'll find out that what we were saying was largely right. Maybe some of it was wrong, and then some people will act like we're still idiots and go talk crap about us, or you know, people will go, oh, well, that was kind of right, mostly right, a little bit wrong, but hey, that is what it is. So, you know, hey, you know what? Let's just go pull up the UCM. I'm just kidding, because I know Matthew wants to go to sleep because we got to wake up at 5 in the morning tomorrow, because we go for 20 hours a day, every day for 6 days a week. But, you know, I'll still read the UCMJ just for you. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, somebody did provide a citation to Article 90, so I'll be taking a look at that while I read off the next question. This next one goes to Joel Gibson, who says, when was the last time Russia tested its ICBMs?
The last time Russia tested its ICBMs, I wouldn't really know. Let's see here. So, when was the last time Russia tested a nuke? 1990. The last time the Soviet Union, the Russians have apparently never tested a nuclear weapon, was on the 24th of October in 1990. The last time the United Kingdom tested a nuclear weapon was on the 26th of November 1991, and the U.S. was on the 23rd of September 1992. So the last time they conducted a nuclear test was 33 years ago. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, in case y'all are curious, I know some people are ready to move on, but since we discussed it, just to let y'all know, I did look up Article 90, the one that was referenced in the live chat. It's titled Willfully Disobeying Superior Commission Officer. And the first line in it says, any person subject to this chapter, which are military soldiers, who willfully disobeys a lawful command of that person's superior commission officer shall be punished if the offense is committed in time of war, by death or other such punishment, and if the offense is committed at any time by such punishment other than death, as a court-martial may direct. And the key word there being lawful, I do see that there, but the catch is, though, that doesn't really tell us anything, because that determination has to be made still by a panel of military judges. It's not clear-cut, it's not black and white, and there's plenty of arguments and defenses to be made in any situation, but that doesn't guarantee the fact that you'll be proven innocent, even if the order was considered unlawful or lawful. It's totally up in the air. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to have somebody deciding whether or not the command was lawful or not. You want to avoid that altogether, just from a defense standpoint, because that's very precarious ground for somebody in a criminal situation, especially in the military. That's tough. I wouldn't want to be there. But anyways, moving on to our next question, we have one from 420, who says, do you think France should supply Ukraine with Exocet anti-ship missiles once they get the F-16s to counter the Russian Navy in Sevastopol?
And really quickly, I'm actually trying to find on the UCMJ where they actually go through and define what unlawful orders are. So really quickly, can you reread that one again?
It says, do you think France should supply Ukraine with Exocet anti-ship missiles once they get the F-16s to counter the Russian Navy in Sevastopol?
Yes, I think they should. The Exocet is an incredibly good missile. It was used to great effect in the Falklands War nearly 40 years ago, so I think it would probably be used to some pretty decent effect against fairly contemporary Navy by the Falklands War time that the Russians have in this current war. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also really quickly, because, you know, I'm still trying to find an answer to this. If someone could actually, because everyone who's telling me about the unlawful order side of things, if you could tell me the exact article in the UCMJ where they define what unlawful orders are, I'd be greatly appreciative, because that'll actually allow us to find out what they call a lawful or unlawful order. So with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and I hope we get an answer to that, because currently I'm having no success in finding an article in the UCMJ that lays out what an unlawful order is. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so let's see if I can find you an answer real quick. Let's see here. Here appears to be a Article 92. They write this very, very crammed together, by the way. Let's see. This is actually pretty condensed. I'll have to breeze over real quick and see if I can find it. But real quick, big shout out to Junebug72, put in a $50 donation, and big thanks to you, Junebug, as well, for supporting the fundraiser. And we have a question. This appears to be the last one from Miss Disa. So, Enforcer, would you like to do the entire thing?
Yes, and we'll be moving on into the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Miss Disa, who says Russian authorities are considering the possibility of exchanging imprisoned foreign citizens and Russian oppositionists for Russian spies detained in Western countries. And thoughts?
I think it's pretty messed up. Because usually they're finding people that aren't spies, they're just like journalists that they invited into Russia and then they're arresting them. So I would say it's pretty messed up. If they're going to try and arrest anyone par on par, why doesn't the FSB do their job and actually find the saboteurs and spies that are in Russia and arrest them instead of just random people that were kind of invited into Russia or are there on actual, you know, meaningful business that doesn't have any kind of subversive element to it. So I think it's pretty messed up and think it's pretty bizarre. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And I think we actually do have a citation here. And let me go put that in.
Yes, we do. I have the definition of lawfulness as defined by Article 92 of the UCMJ. Lawfulness is defined as a general order or regulation is lawful unless it is contrary to the Constitution, the laws of the United States, or lawful superior orders, or for some other reason is beyond the authority of the official issuing it. And they have a place here where you can go see the discussion on it. So it does say here that if it goes contrary to the Constitution, then it would be considered unlawful. But even at that, that is something that would have to be still determined by a judge. Of course, you can go in and argue that something was clearly not constitutional, but it will still be up to the panel as to whether or not that is actually true or not. It's not guaranteed right off the bat that something is going to be automatically considered unconstitutional because you believe it's unlawful.
Also, another thing, and this is actually basic law school stuff here, the Constitution takes precedent over any other law. There's actually a tier structure to laws and what importance they take. You can have a federal statute out there that says something, and the U.S. or the Uniform Code of Military Justice can say something, and if it's in contradiction to the Constitution, the Constitution is going to take precedent over that. And so, Section 2, Article 1, if I'm correct, of the U.S. Constitution states that the President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. So, doing anything to go against that would be direct insubordination, regardless of what the Uniform Code of Military Justice says, regardless of what you think. That would most likely not be argued well in court. Of course, things at that level don't really get argued in court. That would most likely be argued in front of a congressional hearing, because that's most likely where generals would end up if they did something like that, or they would end up being removed by the president. But the problem is if you have a general outright refusing orders or just doing whatever he wants, is the president removing him really going to mean anything, or is that going to make the problem even worse? Who knows? But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And I also want to thank everyone so much tonight. And also, I'm sorry, everyone, that I kind of sound tired and a little worn out, because, you know, we try and have discussions, and whenever I go, you know, I'm actually trying to figure out how to say things in a good worded way. We always try and have discussions on this channel that are interesting, but the problem is that there are some people who like to, instead of having a discussion, they just like to attack people, well, specifically us in the live chat, which makes it very hard to even have a good conversation, because there are some people who are just so dog-headed they don't even want to have one, you know, where they can just be like, well, I think you're wrong because of this and that, and cite things, just, oh, you're an idiot and you're stupid and you're wrong, you know, and it's like, well, I don't say that to anyone unless they're just completely rude. So, you know, that makes it really hard to try and keep a nice, calm tone, especially when you do it for 564 days. You really just want to go off on people who say that because it's just rude and dumb as hell and ignorant as hell to do something like that, especially when you're trying to have a conversation with someone. But it is the end of the night. And I do want to, while I'm saying that, I don't want to dissuade anyone from being massively enthused over the $7.9 thousand that was raised on tonight's fundraiser. It is absolutely amazing to see the Lee Spring Army was able to dominate again tonight and was able to raise nearly $9,000 for Razom for Ukraine. Razom is an amazing nonprofit, and y'all's efforts in helping them out with this fundraiser will be helping them to continue to save lives. And while the folks over there will not know the Lee Spring Army was the one who fundraised that money, they will be able to feel the effects of it, and that alone is good enough for me, and hopefully good enough for all of y'all. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. And we will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time when we cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, LSA. Congratulations for another successful fundraiser, and give me a U, give me a C, give me an M, give me a J. I don't like it. Good night, Slava Ukraine.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться.